what is it I look for in a business, and how do I identify great opportunities? It's got to be a win-win situation. And in business, I learned if it's just for you, it's not going to last very long. So I had to think, what's going to work for them and for me? I made mistakes along the way. I had some major issues that we ran into. I said, I need to share some of these problems that I've already uncovered so that other people don't have these same problems. This is what excites me, to be able to take somebody that's got something that they have no idea what they're sitting on, and within a short period of time, develop it into a $100 million success.
There's real teachers and there's fake teachers. So if I ever want to learn something from somebody, I want to learn from somebody who's doing what it is I want to do. People are very, very afraid of the word debt, but there is such a thing as good debt. Bad debt is your credit cards, your personal house, your car loans, your student debt. That's bad debt that you have to pay for. But good debt is debt that you borrow, for example, on rental properties for businesses, that actually makes you money. Just getting a mind shift change, a paradigm shift around the way you look at money and the way you define words, such as debt, can make a huge difference.
Most high schools in the United States still don't even teach basic personal finance. It's as if money is something that either doesn't really matter or you're just supposed to figure it out on your own. And their professors tell them that we live in this unfortunate economic system that's based on greed and selfishness and exploitation, which is such a mischaracterization, because the beautiful thing about capitalism is it says you can have anything you want if you just provide enough other people with what they want. So that's not greed and selfishness. That's how do you get rich? By helping other people get what they want. And the more people you help, the richer you'll get.
Hi, I'm Patrick Gentempo, and welcome to Wealth Breakthroughs. A wealth breakthrough is a magic moment. It's when building and controlling wealth suddenly goes from being hard to being easy. After you have a wealth breakthrough, nothing is ever the same. Instead of punching a clock, working day and night away from your family to cash a paycheck, wealth begins to build up around you. Showing you how to have your own wealth breakthrough starting today is exactly why we sat down with dozens of experts you're about to meet and posed two important questions. One, what was the wealth breakthrough in your life that put you on the path to success? And two, what's your best advice to those who want to break free from a 9-to-5 lifestyle? The answers you'll see are the greatest collection of real wealth building ideas, strategies, tips, and hacks ever recorded. Now, some of the folks you're about to meet are household names. You've known about their success for years. For the first time ever, now you get to see how they built their wealth. And some experts you'll hear from aren't household names, but make no mistake, they're masters of wealth, just like the famous faces you'll see. Look, you're at the start of an amazing journey, one that could help you break down every barrier that's ever stood between you and the life you really want. It doesn't matter if your passion is entrepreneurship and business building, real estate, or stock market investing. The experts you're about to meet will show you exactly how to start your own path to generations-long stream of wealth, freedom, and happiness. Now, let's get to it. Episode 1 of Wealth Breakthroughs kicks off our mission to master wealth with Kevin Harrington. Kevin, one of the original sharks on the TV show Shark Tank, has taken more than 20 companies from $0 in sales to over $100 million. He started his first business in college and went from being broke and choked by debt to running a $5 million operation with 25 employees in just months. Kevin's story is, in the truest sense of the word, an inspiration and a fantastic place to start finding your own wealth breakthrough. Ladies and gentlemen, here's episode 1. Well, Kevin, I've been anticipating this interview for a while. Obviously, your reputation precedes you, so I'm really excited. Thanks for your time today.
Great to be here. Thank you.
So let's get back to your history. You've got your fingers in a lot of pies. You've got quite a background in the entrepreneurial world. How did this all get started?
I was fortunate to grow up in an entrepreneurial family, and actually, I'm one of 6 kids. I'm number 4. So my father was a bartender, and he saved up enough money to open up his own bar, Harrington's Irish Pub. So at 11 years old, he's like, I know where you're going to be this afternoon after school. I said, where? Down at the pub. Okay, so my dad put me to work early. I literally worked a 40-hour week when I was 11 years old, after school and weekends. And so, but he would teach me the financial operations, the purchasing, and wasn't just, I was washing dishes and beer backing and serving tables and cleaning tables and everything that you do. In fact, I said, how do you become an assistant chef at the age of 11? Your father owns the place, the chef doesn't show up, and you're assisting your father cooking the food, right? So, because that happened quite a bit in small businesses, someone's not going to make it. But to make a long story short, my father came to me as I was getting into college, and in my senior year, and he said, "Look, bad news, that you're the 4th child. I don't have the money to put you through college, so you're going to have to pay your education, your tuition, your books, your living expenses, your car, your insurance, your everything, right? You get 0 contribution from your dad." And so I said, well, I already had a business when I was in high school that I did during the summer. So it's because my dad, again, was mentoring me to be an entrepreneur, which was pretty cool. But now I had to be an entrepreneur year round. I couldn't just have a summer business.
Right.
If I had to pay, I had expenses every month. So, because I had moved out of the house and now I was living on my own. But so I started a heating and air conditioning business. And what I was doing was I was data mining, going to the courthouse and getting leads of new homeowner transactions. And so I actually called the people and I started the heating and air conditioning company, but I offered them, I said, I'm a dead startup from zero company in the heating and air conditioning business. But what I had were thousands of leads of people that just bought a house.
Was it just your instinct to go there and find those leads? I mean, you'd figure that people who are in that business would already have sort of a disposition to say, okay, how do I go market my business? You thought of something that probably other people didn't think of.
Exactly. I just always felt that I was trying to, I was like, how do you start from scratch without an existing business?
Right.
I got to get leads.
Right.
It's all about customer acquisition.
Right.
All my life, my focus has been customer acquisition. So, so I got these leads from people that just bought a new house. They had great credit. They put the biggest amount of money they may ever invest in something into their home generally. And I called and said, welcome to the neighborhood. We're going to come out and do something for you amazing. We're going to clean your furnace and give you a free safety check.
Wow.
No charge. And so we were picking up 20 new accounts a week. But most people would be, hey, what about, we would talk to them about an electronic air cleaner, a humidifier, air conditioning if they didn't have it, and a more efficient furnace. Because in those days, there was something called a pilot light in most furnaces that burned 24/7, 365 days a year. We had the rights to sell a spark ignition furnace. And this saved you 20% of your heating bill right off the bat, just from putting it in. So we went from 0, and this is 1977 when we started this, when I started the company. Went from 0 to $1 million my first year, which was pretty cool because in today's exchange, that'd be pretty close to about a $5 million business. $1 million a year in the 70s is about a $5 million a year today. So this is long before the internet, long before Amazon or Facebook or any of that kind of stuff. So it was really old school marketing, and it turned out to be the courthouse. But anyway, make a long story short, here I was, I had a driveway sealing business in high school, a heating and air conditioning business then in college, and all of a sudden I had 25 employees, 6 trucks going out every day. Wow. I quit school.
I was going to say, did you finish college?
I had to quit school. So I dropped out to run the business because I would get to my company at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and they opened at 7 a.m.
Right.
And all hell had broken loose in many cases, and it was costing me too much money not to be there. Right. And plus I had to hire someone to be there while I wasn't there. So make a long story short, yes, it was a cool business, but I didn't want to be in the heating and air business my whole life for a couple reasons. It was very labor oriented. It was very geographically limiting to Cincinnati, Ohio, where I was born and raised and where this company was. And so it was never going to be a global business that was able to grow organically because I had to install, and I needed technicians, and it was a local business. Right. So I sold it to one of my employees, and then I had a pile of capital as a young kid, and I didn't graduate from school, but I didn't need to. And so I started looking to buy a business. And so I was meeting with these business brokers, and they had, some of them hundreds of companies for sale. Pizza parlors, delicatessens, flower shops, restaurants, import, export, manufacturing companies. And I'm sitting there in front of this broker one day, and he's got stacks and stacks of companies for sale. And he had the books and records. I'm looking at the books and records of these companies, and I'm seeing, what am I seeing? Percentages. I'm seeing food cost percentages, rent percentages, leases, lease agreements. I'm like, this is my college right here, is to look at the P&L statements of 200 companies that are for sale, and why are they for sale? And then, whatever, I said, I want to do this, and that's what I did. I became a business broker to sell businesses, to get the knowledge of the trends and what's going on inside all these companies. So that was 1980. I started a business brokerage company, and so now I'm sitting at the closing table. Somebody just bought a flower shop. Who's going to do your accounting? Oh, do you recommend somebody? Yeah, call this guy. Who's going to do your legal? You may want to be a corporation. Who do you recommend? Call this lawyer. What about insurance? So I'm giving them all these names, and now the lawyer's got 20 new accounts. The insurance agent wrote 20 new policies, 30, whatever the number was. And I said, wait a minute, I want to bring all of this in-house. And so I leased a whole floor of a downtown office building in Cincinnati, Ohio. And then I put the business brokerage in the center of it, and I've rented space around it to an accountant, to a lawyer, to an advertising agency, to graphic people, all the support people to be able to provide services to these small business owners. And I called it the Small Business Center. Come to the Small Business Center. We can sell you a business. We can help you build your business. We can do your accounting, your books, your legal, your this, your that. And it was a synergistic business that worked together. And it took off. It was amazing. And Entrepreneur Magazine heard about it. They did a story on me in the process, and I got 800 phone calls from all over the world. So then Entrepreneur said, I got kind of friendly with the guys at Entrepreneur, and they said, we are Entrepreneur. You're dealing with all these entrepreneurs. Why don't we license this to other people, and almost like a franchise, right? So that's what we did. We opened 30 small business centers across the United States in partnership with Entrepreneur Magazine. And now this was I call it my pre-Shark days, because I was taking equity in deals, and I was, helping people out. I'd sell a business to somebody. They were struggling because they didn't know what to do, and I'd come in and help them out a little bit, get them someone to run it. Maybe someone bought something for a wife, and now she doesn't want to work, or she didn't realize it's going to be an 80-hour week in the mall, right? So the husband said, hey, my wife would love to buy a business, but buying a business and running it it's two separate things, and it can be very, very time consuming. So, make a long story short, this was back in the early '80s now. Kind of takes me through high school, college, owned a couple businesses, sold it, and then started the Small Business Center. We opened 30 of these around the country. So here we were helping entrepreneurs become more successful.
What's interesting is I'm seeing like a little bit of a pattern form. Like Freud once said, it seems to be my fate to discover the obvious. It's like, okay, you're starting this heating business, heating and air conditioning. The obvious place to go for leads was where you went, but other people weren't seeing the obvious necessarily.
Right.
In this case now, hey, there's a bunch of people buying small businesses, usually local businesses. They need all the support, so of course it makes perfect sense. Build a support center around them. This is great win-win for the people who are purchasing the business. Probably increases their probability of success a great deal.
Yes.
And at the same time, now you've got a business in supplying these services. Everybody wins. So you seem to have this pattern of saying, there's a need here. I can observe it. It's an opportunity, and then you take advantage of this. So
Exactly.
Where did it go from there?
So now at 14 employees that were, I say employees, they were really straight commission salespeople.
Right.
And I don't remember the legal definition of what they did, but they were basically commission folks. And so, I was going to a lot of trade shows, and because if I'm selling restaurants, I'm going to tune into that industry. Flowers shops, I got to tune into that industry. I got a home and garden store for sale. I'm going to the home and garden shows. So I was doing about 25 to 30 trade shows a year, which I think even to this day I still do about 20. And so now I'm getting across all these different trade shows, and at the same time, the world of television was something I started to tune into, because here it was the early '80s, and I bought it. I had been successful, so I bought a home, and I remember ordering cable television. When cable TV first came to be in my town, Cincinnati, it was the early '80s. They said, okay, now there's going to be 30 channels in your that you can subscribe to. Until then, if you remember TV before cable, it was only like 4 or 5 channels.
Right.
ABC, CBS, NBC. You pretty much just got a couple channels. All of a sudden, I got 30 channels. And so I remember getting my cable installed, and I got 24 hours of movies, HBO, 24 hours of news, CNN, 24 hours of music, MTV. I get to channel 30, and I'm going through each channel. I'm loving this. 24 hours of sports, ESPN, right? I get to channel 30, and there's nothing there. And so it was just colored bars. And so I called the cable company up, and I said, hey, I don't know what's happening. I said, I really love this cable thing, but I'm only getting 29 of the 30 channels. There's nothing on channel 30. And they said, oh, that's Discovery Channel. It's only an 18-hour-a-day channel. 18 hours of programming, 6 hours of bars on the screen. And I said, well, why is that? They said, it's a new channel. They don't have a budget to produce 24 hours a day. We, as the cable operator, are going to deliver to you what they deliver to us. So here I am thinking, what can go in that 6-hour block? And this was now where the thinking started. So I said to myself, I have to put something in the 6 hours that can generate revenue for me and for the cable operator, because it's got to be a win-win situation. And in business, I learned if it's just for you, it's not going to last very long.
Right.
So I had to think, what's going to work for them and for me? So here I was at the Philadelphia Home Show, home and garden, research, right? And I remember there was one booth with this one guy, and there was this huge crowd around the booth. And when you go to a trade show and you see a crowd around a booth, what do you usually do? You kind of slow up, kind of look, see what's going on, right? And I could barely see what was happening, but this guy is sitting there, he's got a big table, and a knife in his hand. He's cutting through a Coca-Cola can, through a muffler, through a pair of sneakers, and he said, it's called the Ginsu knife. And so, and like that, this guy is selling thousands of dollars worth of Ginsu knives, and I'm watching him. And I'm trying to fight through the crowd to get up to talk to him when he's done. Before I got there, he started all over again, same pitch, and as he had collected money from the last round. But It was the exact same pitch, the same words, cut through the Coca-Cola can, through the muffler, through the pair of sneakers. And I'm like, wow, this guy's been doing this for a while. So finally he got on break. I went up, I introduced myself to him, and I said, hey, I'm an entrepreneur, Kevin Harrington. That's probably the best sales pitch I've ever seen in my life. Tell me about, how you got involved in all of this. And he's like, this guy, he said, well, my name's Arnold Morris. He said, but kid, he said, you think this is glamorous? He said, I do this 40 weeks a year, the same pitch. I'm here in Philadelphia for 6 days. I'm leaving tomorrow. I go to the Iowa State Fair. I'll be there 8 days. I'm away from my family all the time. Yes, I make good money because I saw him collecting thousands of dollars. He said, but it's really grueling, and he was he was in his 70s, wow. Arnold, okay? So that's when the light bulb went off. And I said, Arnold, I said, I have an idea. I said, I don't know if you know anything about Discovery Channel. And he's like, what's Discovery Channel, right? I said, well, it's a channel that's 18 hours a day, 6 hours of nothing. I want to do this. Let's cut a deal. I want to film your presentation. I want to take it down to Discovery, give them a percentage of sales, and I just need to know you and I can put this deal together. And he said, look, if this will get me off the street, off out of heaven to come to the fairs and the home shows, I'm all in. So that's what we did. We filmed. I had never filmed anything before. Right. I mean, I was not a videographer. So I said to Arnold, let's do it. We shook hands, signed a deal, and so Arnold said, look, why don't we just do it right? He lived in New Jersey. He said, there's a grocery store, closes at 8 p.m. I know the manager because I need to be around vegetables and because we're going to be cutting through a lot of stuff. So we shot it at the King's Supermarket in New Jersey, right? The infomercial, right?
I worked at a King's when I was 17 years old in New Jersey.
Oh, really? Yeah. Oh, that's crazy.
So I'm intimately familiar. It might have been the one I even worked at.
Okay, that's where we shot this original show with Arnold Morris. And so we put it up on Discovery, and it just went, phew, it just took off like crazy. And this was just local, Cincinnati. So then I said, I got to go to the National Discovery Channel. I went to the National Channel, signed a contract for a multi-year contract for all 6 hours nationwide. Wow. So when I was sitting with them, I said, I want the whole 6 hour block. They said, oh, well, how much you willing to pay for it? And I said, look, I'll give you $1,000 a day. And so for 6 hours. And we ended up getting it done. So at that deal, and so I'm like, in the very beginning, 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. wasn't very powerful, but as we got to 6 a.m. to 9, it was 3A to 9A was the 6 hour block. Right. Okay, as we got to like 6A, 7A, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. we had Saturdays and Sundays. This time, we could do a whole lot of our sales on a couple of hours. Right. In the day or the week, but this thing, by the third year, that block of time was generating $28 million in sales. Wow! For a $365,000 media cost. So we were making money, and then we were doing Arnold. Then Arnold got smart. He said, "Hey, look. Were you at the Philadelphia Home Show? Did you meet any of the other guys like me that had products? Because he was just one stand." And I said, "I really didn't." I said, "What are you thinking?" He said, "Well, hey, I'd like to introduce you to all the other product guys." He says, "But look, give me an agreement that you're going to give me a royalty on anything you do with Billy Mays, with John Parkin, with Sandy Mason, with Wally Nash."
So all these guys were at the basically dog and pony shows, like demonstrating.
All pitch people,
and they were great pitch people, right?
They spent their entire life learning how to pitch something, and they were the best at that particular product.
And so basically, you took them out of that circuit, put them on TV,
exactly,
to create scale and leverage. Yeah.
Exactly. We started with Arnold, and before we knew it, we had 25 infomercials. A lot of it in the kitchen. We were doing knives, we were doing blenders, we were doing mixers. Wally Nash said, "I've got this hand-hammered Chinese wok that's hand-pounded, and they make them over in China. It's got it's got the original pounding marks from it so that it can hold the meats and vegetables up and things as you're cooking, keep them warm, and you're hand pounding it. And so we did 4 million walks at over $50 a piece.
Wow.
So $200 million in Chinese, hand-hammered Chinese walks. What do we call it? The Great Walk of China, okay? And so, and it's so amazing because, I mean, now, we did that in 1988, by the way. Hundreds of millions of dollars. What are we bringing maybe back to the marketplace just recently? QVC came to us and said, can you bring us some of those old products you had from the old days? So we're actually now going to be bringing the hand-hammered Chinese walk back potentially, right? So, but that was Arnold knew all these people. He was like their friend. And they're like, Arnold, you don't have to work anymore? He's like, I'm getting millions of dollars in the mail for not just doing my presentation one time. I mean, that's how an infomercial works. You shoot it once. I mean, Chuck Norris did the Total Gym 20 some years ago. It still runs, the same one. I mean,
wow.
and he's made tens of millions of dollars, by the way.
So let me ask you this. So there's no doubt that your timing, so I want to get kind of your philosophy on this. No doubt that, you know, your timing and being at that home show, seeing this guy, having cable just come in and you kind of put 2 and 2 together.
Yes.
And we know a certain amount of success is just timing. But there's also this element of, I think no matter what was going on in any time, you're going to see opportunity. So is this something that is like a teachable skill, or is this something you're born with, some combination of both? How do you see all this?
So what was interesting is once we ended up opening the infomercial business, we decided that, okay, we need to go to a lot of trade shows. This is, you know, where I found Arnold, right? And so we started, you know, so we hired a few people, and we started with a small staff. And so I'll never forget, the very first trade show we went was at the Jacob Javits Center in New York. I had my new team of, you know, so we're running infomercials, and I got my new team, and I take them all up to the show, and I just said, okay, let's all hit the show. You start over there, you start over there, I'll start here. Let's meet in 2 hours. And so now I'm walking the show, and I'm finding products. They're walking the show when we meet. I said, what'd you find? Oh, nothing. There's nothing here. This is a waste of time. My guys are telling me. And I'm like, well, I found this and I found that. And I'm like, well, what you know, so I hadn't taught them how to do a trade show, right? So I said, okay, look, there's product here. You know, you're not going to just see it because sometimes the best products are actually behind the curtain, because they're not necessarily showing you the hottest, latest, greatest thing at the show. So what I taught my folks how to do is walk to the booth. Don't talk to somebody that's like a local hired person that knows nothing about the company. Get to the CEO of the company if you can. If it's a huge company, you may not, but you know, if it's a 10-foot by 10-foot booth, the owner's probably standing there, right? And what you're going to tell them is, you have developed this new industry. You're part of this new, as seen on TV industry, where we take products, we select products, we create this amazing selling message around it called an infomercial. And in the beginning, they weren't even called infomercials, but and we have success now where we're selling millions of pieces. And what do you have in this booth that might be applicable for my business? And now I took my team with me, and we got, oh, wait, I got something I've been working on for, you know, let me show you. We walked out of that show with several deals. So yes, there is a way to hit a trade show. It's not just walking it and thinking that product's just going to smack you.
Right.
Although I will say this, at the Chicago Houseware Show, my father, who was my original mentor, he's like seeing me do all these things, and he's like, wow, he says, you know, I maybe could go to some of these shows and see if I can find some stuff. Well, he ran into a guy that was slicing something with a product called the V-Slicer. And most slicers had a blade that went across, but when you put a tomato through it, as the blade went across, it kind of slid the tomato off to the side. A V-shaped blade kept it in the middle, and you could work it much faster. It was a German-made product, and so my dad met the V-slicer people and said, "What do you think?" We went straight from the Chicago Houseware Show back to Philadelphia, where I was living at the time, shot the infomercial, and that went on to sell over 10 million V-slicers at $35 a piece. So that did over $350 million. And that was something that my father brought me. And by the way, I paid him royalty checks for bringing me the deal. So, because that was something that I always protected. You bring me a deal, we're going to sign a contract and give you a piece of the action. And so we started making many, many millionaires. I mean, we weren't just making Arnold a millionaire, but the people that would introduce us to the next Arnold, or the people that would, in the case of Arnold, he introduced me to Billy, so he was making money and he had multiple streams of income beyond his own products.
So this, I think, innovated a lot of the TV things like QVC, HSN, because I know that there's people there also who bring deals to them and get a royalty on it. So
Absolutely.
I guess you kind of like developed that whole model, from the early days
Yes.
as far as how this works. Because if you have people out there searching and recruiting, again, that's leverage because there's only so many places you can be to try to find products.
Exactly.
So
Right.
now so obviously this whole industry blew up, and still to this day, as you said, there's infomercials that run for decades and
They've been running for decades.
still produce, which is mind-boggling to me because I don't know really any other medium that has products that can make that claim. At least nothing comes to mind. So it's amazing that it works on TV this way.
Yeah, I mean, the beauty of what an infomercial is, because it's important to understand, the spot business existed before me, 1 minute spots. And they would sell, like Ron Popeil was the pocket fisherman.
I remember.
And $20 for this little fishing device. And he had the Chop-O-Matic, and he had Mr. Microphone. These were 1 minute spots selling $20 products that cost $2 to $3 to manufacture. Okay? That's business existed. I came along and said, I got 6 hours to fill. I can't fill 6 hours with 1 minute spots. Let's sell $300 products. Let's sell the Gazelle for $300 or $400. Let's sell, the Chinese wok was $40, but we were selling a hand blender for $99, but we had 30 minutes to sell it.
Right.
So we created this industry. We created 3 10-minute pods in a 30-minute show. Each pod had a CTA at the end of it, a call to action.
Right.
So you did a 10-minute, it was actually a little less than 10 minutes because at the end, a 30-minute infomercial was actually 28 minutes and 30 seconds because we had to give 1.5 minutes back to the station. So in 28:30, we had sort of 3 9-minute plus pods. And they were 9 minutes, including a call to action at the end, so that you could actually come in at any point during the 30-minute show, and some of what was in the first pod would be repeated in the second pod with some new stuff.
Did you start it? Yeah, so you figured all that out before you even ran the first infomercial that you...
Well, as we were doing the infomercials, because what happened was this. Arnold, he said, look, I have an 18-minute version of my Ginsu pitch, but I also have an 8-minute version. Which do you want? I said, well, we got 30 minutes. I said, do you have a 30-minute version? He said, man, I can't go 30 minutes from this thing. So the original show was only 26 minutes long because we just, we ran the CT, he went 18 minutes and we ran the show with 3 2-minute CTAs on the back of it, and we couldn't get it past 26 minutes. So it was what it was, but we've learned more about production. Oh, let's go shoot some testimonials and let's fill it with some other stuff, right? I mean, if they're giving you 28 minutes and 30 seconds, you might as well use all 28, 30. Of course, we owned the whole 6-hour block, so that was a little different because we could just program that. So what we would do is, if we had a 26-minute long show, we just put some short form commercials on the back end of it. But yes, we learned that some products, I mean, when you think about it, you can pretty much understand certain products pretty quickly.
Yeah.
You don't really need 30 minutes to understand them, but I can, if I can create the selling message in less than 10 minutes, let's reboot it 3 times, but you also freshen it with some, you don't use the exact same footage, but it's a similar style selling message in the other pods.
Yeah, well, the thing that, again, the consideration or the foresight saying, people are going to join not at the minute it starts, and that they're coming in at different times. So you have all these considerations for when an audience member might start viewing and what you have to take them through and how to keep them interested, et cetera.
Exactly.
And I've always found, that infomercials are compelling. In other words, it's like, it's like watching a show, except that you're really being sold something, but the story. So I have to imagine also having people who are used to giving pitches, over and over again live, that those are the right people to get on camera and to present the product.
Yeah, so exactly. That's why Billy Mays, because these were people that honed their pitch at the fairs and the home shows, and
they know how an audience responds to them.
So as they're delivering the pitch the first time, people are asking questions, and they're realizing, oh, I didn't cover that? Okay. Now they incorporate the answer to that question into their next pitch.
Right.
And so this is how, on the shopping channels, people like Tony Little, we would put him on, maybe didn't work the first time. Well, that's okay, because they're going to give us 4 airings on a product for Tony. The very first time, it may not do so well, but we have various case studies of products that actually had a 10x sales increase by the time we did the 4th appearance.
So speak to that for a second, because this is, I think, a critical lesson in marketing.
Yes.
Right? Same product. Because a lot of times, many business entrepreneurs, or one version of them, are product developers, right?
Yeah.
They've got an idea, usually a passion around the idea. It's like, I've got a breakthrough innovation for exercise, like you're talking about Tony Little, right?
Yeah.
So you got the same product.
Yeah.
The same person pitching
the product.
Yeah. But you need a certain amount of feedback. So it's not just the product, it's not just the pitch person, but the feedback saying, okay, this was missing, we add this, and have a 10x increase. It's not like, oh, we incrementally went from 10 or 15% more.
Right.
A tenfold increase in sales.
Yeah.
So speak to the importance of getting the copy or the communication down from a marketing perspective.
Yeah. So I'll give you a good case study with Tony Little. When Tony Little first came to me with the Gazelle, it was the walking on air Gazelle, right? In fact, you see it in today's national car rental commercials. I don't know if you've seen that.
I've seen it.
Tony's going across the stage. That's our product for for 15 years. And so when I first met Tony, I said, "Wow, this is very expensive, though. It's this is going to be $400 to $500." So we said, "Okay, well let's put it on HSN. Let's test it." So the very first time, Tony goes on himself with the host and is selling a $500 Gazelle. It bombed. And we're like, oh, wow, this was not so good. But they gave us 4 airings.
Right.
So here we are. Tony just went on live. He got his 10 or 20 minutes, and it didn't do well. So now we come back. Now let's watch this. Okay, but Tony, you're a fitness guy. You're in great shape. You're selling a $500 product that you use. But we're talking to middle America here, and people that want to lose weight, yes, but you're not connecting with them. So what do we need to do? Oh, let's get some people on set using the product also. Young, old, open it up so that we can now see this isn't just for fitness gurus like Tony. Anybody can jump on this. So as we progressed from the first to the second to the third to the 4th airing, we added little things each time, and the sales were like doubling, okay? So we put more people on, and we put seniors on, we put women on, we put young people on. Then we added music for fun. So now they were doing this, having fun with all different age groups on set, and it just blew huge numbers by the 4th time.
Wow.
That was the 10x. So now we had a winner that we can now, so HSN was ordering big quantities from there. Then we said, let's go do the infomercial. Right. So we used the shopping channels to actually figure out our pitch, hone the pitch, and only work on the ones that really worked successfully on a shopping channel. That was our model in the very beginning, is taking products that had already tested somewhere. They tested at a trade show. They tested on a catalog. They tested on a shopping channel. Where did they already test successfully so that we know there's proof of concept?
You know, it's interesting. I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but for one of my masterminds, I invited a guy to come speak who wrote a book, Life's a Pitch.
Okay.
And really, and this is the thing to understand, is that so often I think entrepreneurial failure will come from people who they have the personal passion for the product.
Yes.
There is a need and demand, but they don't know how to refine a pitch. And what you just walked through, because you say it so naturally, you almost make it seem easy, but I happen to know this isn't easy. It really isn't, as far as saying, what do we need? Oh, let's get them to visualize, different people with their, like you said, females, older, younger, overweight, what have you.
Right.
But then you also had a second thing, and this is a big deal, saying, let's add music and make it fun.
Yes.
So people can say, I can do this and it would be fun. Now it makes sense. It's the same product, the same pinch, man. These things, and like you said, it's a difference between failure. It would be like you said, use the word bombed, right?
Right.
And then a 10x sales. So
it's absolutely. And we also, on the shopping channels, we'd start getting call-ins.
Yeah.
And as people were asking their questions, now we're formulating the answers, but we're now incorporating the answers to those questions into the next pitch. So we would really use the shopping channels as a proving grounds, a testing grounds, and we could do price testing. We could do the real advantage you had as a shopping channel is that we would get a call in and somebody would say, oh, someone that bought it. So now next time Tony's on, if you bought a Gazelle, call the line and tell us what you've experienced.
Right.
And now when you get the call-ins coming in, you'd see, the spike in phone calls. So what we would track is where did we get the spikes in phone calls through this 20-minute presentation. At 3 minutes and 11 seconds in, we got a bunch of phone calls. What did Tony say at that particular moment? We'd go back and track the performance of the calls coming in against the creative and see how do we create this amazing pitch. So we used the shopping channels to price test, to creatively test the approach for the pitch.
So how important to product success are testimonials? Are they something that are not paid attention enough to for most business owners, or how do you see it?
I think there's certain kinds of products where testimonials are key. Beauty products, weight loss products, where there's, if there's a magical transformation capability, testimonials are great because think of Proactive, a skincare product. That's an acne product. You can show somebody with severe acne, and now 6 weeks later, clear skin. That's what makes that product work on TV. It's the magical transformation of that testimonial. So this is why with Tony Little, for example, we said, okay, the fact that you use it is great, but we need to get the mass market using this, having fun with it, and talking about it, right? So that's where testimonials became also kind of critical. But then we could fast forward and get weight loss testimonials from people that had used it and lost weight and got in shape. So I think in the infomercial world, testimonials are important. In today's world of digital, where things are a little shorter now, having testimonials is still important, but you also don't have as much time. So you don't get 30 minutes on Facebook to necessarily talk about a product. You might get 60 seconds. So I think the fact that you can have testimonials is a positive, obviously, and also celebrity testimonials can be even better because I say there's a bunch of different kinds of testimonials. There's user testimonials. There's professional testimonials, which would be maybe a doctor or a lawyer. There's celebrity testimonials. Then editorial testimonial is a newspaper, a magazine, or a trade journal writing about your product, which is always good because what does the industry think about you, right?
And you had that in the beginning with Entrepreneur Magazine way back when, right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
right. So here we were with Arnold Morris and Billy Mays and all these amazing kitchen products. So Homeworld Magazine was the publication that wrote about that industry. The CEO of Homeworld Magazine, also the editor, started doing stories about our products, and these were very positive stories because he wants to talk positively about his industry of home furnishings, right? And so I'll never forget an amazing marketing campaign that we created when we had launched a product called the Jetstream oven. And this was a convection oven on steroids. It went 4 times the speed of a convection oven, but it was infrared technology. So it could literally cook things almost as fast as a microwave, but it would brown and crisp the products instead of wilting them like a microwave would, right? I mean, you couldn't take you can't take a piece of chicken out of the refrigerator, put it in a microwave for 2 minutes and expect that it's going to be cooked properly. It's going to be soggy and nasty.
Yeah, you're a great pitch man yourself. Like, you make me want these products as you describe them. Good.
So the Jetstream oven we launched in 1991 at the Chicago Houseware Show. Right. Now I said, I've got 100,000 people that have come from literally 100 countries from around the world. And what are they there for? This is the trade. They're there for the newest, latest, hottest products. So all these people are staying in Chicago. They all have to do one thing, check into a hotel. I found that SpectraVision was the company that provided all of the television to 90+% of the hotels in Chicago. So I went to SpectraVision and cut a deal to buy one channel that in all of the hotels. And that channel, what we did was we put the Jetstream oven on 24 hours a day. And we interviewed the CEO of Homeworld Magazine, and he said, this is going to be one of the top products at the show, and you can see it at booth number XXX. And so when you checked into your hotel room and you turned your TV on, the Jetstream oven infomercial auto-played.
Wow.
And then as people were watching it, then it told you what booth to go to. And so everybody at the show was like, I don't know, I'm seeing that Jetstream everywhere. Well, it's because it was in their hotel room and they couldn't turn their TV on without seeing it. But this thing kicked off in an amazing, I got to the show the next day, there was 250 people in line to get into the booth of the Jetstream oven. And we went from 0 to $100 million within 12 months and ended up, that product became a huge grand slam.
So that's like, again, pure genius. I mean, again, I'm seeing this pattern, going to see who the new home buyers were way back when in your college business, saying, okay, where are they going to be? Well, they're all got to be in a hotel. It seems obvious, but nobody knows thinking of this thing. I'm going to get the channel. It's going to default to the channel when they turn on the TV. And that's how you go from maybe a great product that some people know about to $100 million in sales in the business.
For $3,000 a day, to SpectraVision, for 3 days, for $9,000, I had a 24-hour channel that broadcast to every attendee of that show, and it became the hit of the talk of the show, and it was amazing. What's
interesting to me is I speak at a lot of conventions, and I go in and turn on the TV, and there's usually something like this that's going to be featured at the convention that I'm going to be presenting at.
Yes.
I had no idea that this is something that you brought to the world.
One of my competitors, and this is a crazy story, but one day, Tony Little, we were very successful with Tony, and one of my guys, Tony came in to pick up a check or something, and one of my guys said, Tony, he's like, he had been in a car accident and he had gained 40 pounds, looked bad, he was lethargic. And my buddy said, Tony, where's your beach body? And Tony's like, what do you mean? He's like, I had an accident, I'm not feeling good, He's like, and then the guy's like, beach body. He says, we should do an infomercial called Beachbody. And this is Carl Deichler.
Right.
Carl worked for me, and Carl went off and started a company called Beachbody.
Right.
And they own P90X and the Brazilian butt lift, and they now have picked up all these hotel channel deals. So you'll see Carl's company is now they signed some kind of a deal with many of the hotels. So he saw the success we had and continued to market to the hotel channel population, because I think they called it the Traveler Shopping Channel or something, but that's Beachbody.
Wow. I feel like I could talk about this all day. So you are doing a bunch of ventures that aren't necessarily like TV or infomercial based also. So what other businesses did you get into, and how did you get into those?
So what happened is, as an entrepreneur, I'm off building these different businesses, and we had more than 20 products that exceeded $100 million in sales individually. So that was pretty cool. I mean, some did $1 billion, some did $500 million, some did $250 million. We were doing we did kitchen products, we did hardware products, we were doing beauty products, we were doing, fitness and golf. The very first golf infomercial was the Medicus Golf Club. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but it flops and you can't complete your swing. Davis Love. So again, I used to go to 20, 30 trade shows a year. I love the golf show because I love to play a little golf. So I'm like, let's go check out the golf show. And Davis Love is there, and he's swinging his club, and it's flopping. And he's like, oh, if you don't have a good swing, it flops in the middle of your swing because you're not grooving it properly. You're yanking it up too fast. If you groove it properly, you can complete the swing and finish your shot. Anyway, so we were doing infomercials in pretty much every category: toys, golf, fishing. The very first fishing infomercial we did was called the Flying Lure. So now what happened is, we said we need to raise some capital, because when you're doing in the old days, and this is something a lot of people say, how did you do this? We didn't have the money in the beginning, so we would run the shows and we would say, we're going to ship this to you in 6 to 8 weeks. I don't know if you remember seeing on TV 6 to 8 week delivery, right? Now, can you imagine ordering from Amazon today and Amazon telling you, oh, we'll get it to you in 8 weeks, right? You're not in business if you're shipping in 8 weeks. But we had to do it because we had to get the order and then go make the product.
Right.
I mean, literally. And so we needed capital. And a public company came along and they said, hey, we've got a little pubco, we got lines of credit. If we acquire your entity, you can run the company, but we'll give you the lines of credit, you'll get a bunch of stock, and now you'll have capital. So now I started getting into some financial markets because, and this is now the early 90s, was my first experience with running a public company. Turned out to actually be, we ended up on the New York Stock Exchange, was pretty cool. So I had, in 1991, I started doing public company kinds of things. And at that particular time, I was on the board. I was the second largest shareholder of the company. We took a company from $1 a share to over $20 a share. We had 25 million shares. So at one time it was worth, 20 million. Now it's worth 500 million. And that was just over a couple of years. And by the way, what I saw as an investor owning the stock, that, if I had been running the company personally, I'm plugging lots of money into it, and I'm not necessarily making tens of millions of dollars in my pocket, because I'm having to invest and maybe somewhere down the line sell the company to get my money. Whereas in a pubco situation, I own the stock. I mean, the stock, I'd come in the morning, one day the stock is $5. The end of the day, it's $8. Well, I got millions of shares. I just made $6, $8, $10 million in one day. It's like, I found myself now saying, okay, do I want to sell $29 gadgets, or do I want to be involved with public companies that can create tens of millions of dollars in value in a day?
And that's one of the things I think that a lot of people don't appreciate about owning a private company is exactly what you said.
Yeah.
It's there's a certain amount maybe of profit that you're showing, on your P&Ls, but you've got to fund the company, continue to funding the operation, continue to fund the expansion of the company, et cetera. So your real payoff is one day if the company exits, if you sell it.
Exactly.
Whereas you're saying the public company now, you've got, if you have credit vehicles available, available. You got stock, it's liquid. You can, I want to buy a new house, maybe sell some of my stock.
Exactly.
It gives you a lot more flexibility and
Yes.
leverage, I guess, in growing.
Yeah, because it's like the other thing, because we ended up getting some lines of credit and things, like I mentioned, but the banks, you also have to keep certain ratios. You also, you can't be just distributing to yourself.
Right.
Let's take $2 million and put it in my pocket today.
Fiduciary responsibility to shareholders.
I want to go do this, I want to go do that, right? Well, the reality is that, it is a private, if you're a public company, you really have, you got to be careful what you do. But as a private company, if you're dealing with banks, they're going to restrict you from doing a lot of stuff that you might want to do, meaning taking cash out of the company, right? So, I think at the end of the day, you always kind of have somebody that you got to be keeping your eye on. If it's a private company and you got all the capital in the world and there's no banks involved, you do whatever you want.
Right.
But many times you got some financing institutions helping you with lines of credit, different things. Because we're selling to QVC, we're selling to Walmart, we're selling to Target. How do you finance all of that? Well, you can get a purchase order, and it's a bankable instrument in many cases. So, but they're not going to loan you the money if you're grabbing millions of dollars out the back door, right? So, but public companies this is what I started seeing as a very significant opportunity, and this started in the early 90s.
And that's the difference between, for lack of a better term, a lifestyle business versus a real business. Lifestyle business, cash flows really well. You live a good lifestyle, pulling the cash out all the time. A real business is where you're putting the value back into the business and growing it that way. And your payout it's delayed gratification. The big payouts will come later when you sell or go public.
Yeah, I mean, I had tens of millions of dollars in liquid stock that I was allowed to sell as long as we weren't in any kind of a quiet period. But I would never have accumulated that running a private company in terms of taking distributions type of thing, right? So, so public was something that really was very attractive to me because, raising capital with a public company, you issue stock. Okay, so it's like being able to almost print your own money if you can issue stock to enough people to get enough capital to behind the public company.
So we talked earlier because of my background. You were involved in a chiropractic franchising business.
Yes,
it was very exciting. I guess you have some other businesses that are non-related to infomercials and TV sales. But you're also now you've got this accumulated wisdom that you for decades of experience, and you're putting out a newsletter.
Yes.
So tell me about that.
So what happened is companies would start coming to me and say, I know you do a lot of product stuff, but I need some great business advice. And one of the things that I have not mentioned yet, but in 1987, I was hanging around with some cool entrepreneurs, Michael Dell from Dell Computers, Ted Leonsis, who was the #2 guy at AOL, and Ted's a billionaire, Dell was a billionaire, but they weren't at that time. I was a young entrepreneur. They were both. Dell was working out of his dorm room making computers, and Ted was just doing software. But we said, hey, let's get an organization for young entrepreneurs, and we launched the Young Entrepreneurs Organization. It's called YEO.
Right.
And we said, we each put some money into an account, launched it. It was nonprofit, and we said you can't be older than 40 because we were like in our 20s, right? So as we got older, we're like, wait a minute, this young part is kind of playing against us because we're now getting close to 40 and we're not even going to be a member. So we took off the 40. We said you can be 50 and let's take off the Y, and it's now called EO. Right. It's the world's largest entrepreneurial organization. We're in 155 cities and more than 50 countries. Yeah. And EO is very powerful. I'm the co-founder with a number of other folks, and so now I was speaking. I launched EO in Shanghai, and I launched EO in London. I launched EO in Latin America. As I'm going around the world, not everybody's in the product business, but they're like, hey, I'm an entrepreneur. I need some help. Would you be an advisor to me? Yeah. So I started mentoring. And really, to be honest with you, in the beginning, I mentored for free because I was just helping friends.
Right.
And this was part of the whole concept of EO was join the club, so to speak. Now you get a local chapter, but there's national meetings and things, and you're going to get some great advice from like-minded people. And so in the beginning days, it was, and my wife used to say, why do you do all of this for free? You're helping this guy and you're helping that guy and you're helping this guy. And I said, well, that's just part of the camaraderie of what we've created, but maybe someday I'll monetize this, okay? So today I just don't have the time to do it all for free. So now people come to me and they want some help. A buddy of mine called me. He worked for me for a number of years back in the mid 90s. And he said, hey, I just got involved with a beverage company. And the gentleman's name was Jerry David. And Jerry, he said, we have this little beverage company. It's a product called Celsius. And the stock's 10 cents a share. It's a pink sheet. We don't really have any money. Would you help us out? Could you take a look at what we're doing? And so I went down. They're down in Boca. Took a look. And he says, you know what? Why don't you just join our board? We'll give you some stock. We'll do this. We'll do that. And I said, okay, great. Let's do it. Now, this isn't an as seen on TV product. This is a drink. It's an energy drink that's healthy. And so I joined the board, and the stock it was 10 cents. It had gone to like 20 cents. But there was no volume pink sheet. And so 22 cent stock. And I said, let's go raise some capital. We got through one of my connections, we met a big investor in Hong Kong, Li Kai-shing, one of the wealthiest guys in Hong Kong. And he had a chain of 25,000 stores in Hong Kong. And he said, I'll give you $16 million if I get the exclusive rights to Celsius for my distribution over here. So that was the first 16 million, and we raised another 15 million, and we raised another 25 million. The company's gone from a couple million to over $300 million now. Wow. And so, and I am participating in all of that now as a partner and stockholder of the company. So I'm on about 15 advisory boards and board of official boards and advisory boards of different companies. One is a company that replaces lighting in. It's called Zinergy, and it's a small pubco, but gaining some big traction. And the stock is doubling and tripling of late. And that's I love helping companies get into an IPO situation, because if I can get them pre-IPO or just at the beginning of a pubco situation, a lot of times we have tremendous growth opportunities ahead. And that's where I like to get in on the ground floor. So that's what the newsletter is all about.
What's it called?
Startup Millionaires.
Okay, so what kind of stuff are you going to be writing about and talking about in Startup Millionaires?
So first of all, I talk about what is it I look for in a business, and how do I identify great opportunities. Right. And that, at the end of the day, the more deal flow you have, you got to have good deal flow, because if you only have two things that you can look at to invest in, neither one of them may really be a good deal. Right. If you've got 500 things to look at, how do you whittle it down to get the top 3 or 4 out of that 500? Because that's ultimately what we do, is we're dealing with hundreds and thousands of opportunities that we're whittling down to 3, 4, 5 that we actually invest in. So that process and how we identify the initial products and go down the line, that's part of the learning that we give the people that subscribe to the newsletter.
So is a lot of this kind of sharing your own experience and wisdom through all the? How many companies have you been involved in now? All this time.
Well, I've invested in over 500,
wow.
And I've had probably 150 of them that have actually made money and returned money back to the investors.
Yeah, so looking at how you filter all those things, what you look for, et cetera, that'd be very valuable. And do you also get into some of the trends maybe of what's going on in business, what you're seeing? Do you spot any of that stuff? Because
So I talk about what I look for. I talk about trends, and I actually, in the newsletter, we actually share some companies that we are following and companies that we are investing in also.
Wow.
So we like to make over the years, and it's kind of been a weekly. I typically invest in up to 50 companies a year, and we're continuing down that same path of about one a week that we actually invest in. So I'm happy to share with my newsletter community, to those that subscribe to Startup Millionaires, the picks that I'm excited about, and then tell them why and how I got there. So that's part of that whole process of the newsletter.
Yes, I'll tell you what I like about this, that you're getting into this at this stage of, you're kind of like this now very, I could say, sage or matured person who's had all this experience. My experience in sitting and interviewing you and other people for this series is that, boy, once I kind of get into the frame of reference, the mindset, the understanding, you see the knowledge and wisdom and experience that's there, is how can I continue to try? It's like, okay, this is great. I got all this download information. I'm like, I'm really better because of it.
Yes.
But I also know that dripping it over time, is what really dials you in and keeps you consistently on the right track, as compared to saying, I got a good chunk of inspiration here, but you need to continue it. And because you're writing now, I guess, because you're also doing a free newsletter, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. Startup Profits Daily. And this newsletter is very educationally oriented, that gives great value to the subscribers on kind of how we process deals and the education of different industries and what we look for in deals. So it's not necessarily picks like the other ones are, but it's an educational newsletter.
Well, I once heard somebody say, it's great to be a seeker, but eventually you have to become a finder. And really, you've sought out deals. Obviously you've got a pretty extraordinary entrepreneurial life that you've lived. But I'm happy to see that you're turning into a finder now, kind of giving back what you found so that other people can share in it. What does that feel like for you from a fulfillment standpoint?
Well, I think I mentioned my wife earlier, like, why do you keep doing this, helping all these people? But I believe it's kind of been my philosophy. When I started EO, YEO, which became EO, it was to give back to the entrepreneurial community. And also, I made mistakes along the way. I had some major issues that we ran into, and we can talk about some of that if you want to go down that path. But I said, I need to share some of these problems that I've already uncovered. One of them was with a merchant account situation that I got just devastated by, the bank. And so I said, I need to share the problems so that other people don't have these same problems. But I also had a mentor in my life, Zig Ziglar, if you remember the famous Zig, right? I know Zig Ziglar, yeah. So Zig lived his life with this one quote that I think is been sort of my mantra also, and it's that you can get everything in life you want if you just help enough other people get what they want. Right. And so I find myself, it's funny because the Celsius opportunity, which will make me millions of dollars, was because I helped somebody, Jerry David, somewhere years earlier. But I never knew what would come from that. But, I went out of my way to help Jerry. And then Jerry said, Kevin, come, I want to maybe see if I can help you get involved in something exciting. So I believe that if you give back to the entrepreneurial community, it's going to come back to you. And that's how I've lived my life. Yeah, well, I can say that you certainly have given quite a bit here through your passion. This is one of the things that maybe the final question I have for you. You seem, probably to me, I didn't know you back in college when you started that business or high school, but you seem to have lost zero effort or energy or enthusiasm for being an entrepreneur after decades and after this success. So what drives you? What continues to drive you like this? Well, I've got two kids and two grandkids now. So it's like, it's cool to see that. Yeah. Big Christmas coming up, going to have the whole family together this year. And I believe that when I look at, my oldest son's 31 and my youngest son just turned 22 and a couple of grandkids, and I see that that I want to be able to hand the baton and just let them take it and run from here. So they're both in my business, and my oldest boy's been with me 10 years now in business. And so I just feel that giving them the access to all the things that are going on is good. And I still really love finding new opportunities and watching them grow. And so over the years, I mentioned 20 products that have gone to over 100 million individually. And so to this day, I still focus on, okay, what's my next $100 million success? Right. And we have one this year. So it doesn't happen every single year, right, but in 35 years, it's been pretty close to 25 now. So, and now the year 2019, we have one. So, so this is what excites me, to be able to take somebody that's got something that they have no idea what they're sitting on, and within a short period of time, develop it into a $100 million success. So there's no better feeling in my world than to do that. So I still enjoy it. And now I give my kids equity in the deals as we go along, so they get to see the stocks going up in value, and hey, sometimes they go down in value. Right, but if we're doing the right things and we're bringing our value to the table, because some of them are private, but we also do get involved in pubcos. But startup millionaires, for example, a startup can be a private company, and they all start private generally, and then they move along and raise some capital and get into the first round and the second round, and then maybe they go public. But I believe that the true money can be made if you know when to get in at those early stages before the fourth and the fifth financing round, right, and before they go public, because pre-IPO has great opportunity.
Yeah, and just so everybody understands, when you say pre-IPO, so you're looking at companies that are successful privately, they're poised to get into their IPO, but typically the IPOs are kind of rigged by the investment banks that take them public. Their friends, they get their clients, if you will, and friends in the IPO for them, and then we get the scraps after it launches. So are you targeting right before the IPO? That's kind of like what you're looking at?
Well, I actually target even before that time, like right before the IPO. Sometimes it's too late, because actually sometimes right before the IPO, it might even be a little more expensive, because they find out in the IPO it's got to be a lower price. Right. So I've talked about stories where I was offered some pre-IPO stock, supposedly at a discount to market, but it was a discount to the private market. But once the IPO hit and the IPO went down, because as you mentioned, there's some riggings going on sometimes in those situations. Right. It's, if I would have taken the pre-IPO stock right before the IPO, I would have lost half my money. Wow. So I like to get in, much more at the earlier stage, when it's, when the company's just coming out, or in the round one or round two, Series A, Series B, whatever it might be. Early on is my preference.
I get it. So now basically, and you've got a lot of experience kind of spotting these, seeing which ones are working, which ones aren't working. So is that one of the things that you'll be writing about in Startup Millionaire, saying, hey, I see a company, you can get in on a round now, it's early enough where they're likely going to head towards an IPO, and you're going to really make it. So do you think that's kind of the sweet spot for investors right now? That's a great place to go in, rather than try to go in and buy stocks in the public market. Find these a little bit earlier stage and pick them and go.
It's absolutely one of my sweet spots. In many of more of the companies that I've been involved with have been non-IPOs, pre-IPO, startup rounds. And I mean, just recently we made an investment in a company over in India on a private market. It was $1 million valuation. It's approaching a $50 million valuation now, and it still has not gone IPO. Wow. So and it's going to go beyond that. So these are the kind of things I like to get in on. Is when they're $1 million, knowing that it's probably going to be hopefully a couple $100 million soon.
Well, I'll be reading that newsletter.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, I want to know about these. That's terrific. Listen, you had such great energy and information. I can't thank you enough for taking the time to sit and share all that with us, and I'm looking forward to see the stuff you write about.
Hey, thanks for having me today, Patrick. Great to be here.
Yeah, so great to be with you. Thank you.
Hi, welcome back. One of the things I love most about Kevin Harrington's story isn't that he's taken so many companies from 0 to 100 million over and over again, is that he's done it in all kinds of niches and industries year after year. He's a walking encyclopedia of practical how-to genius when it comes to locking down your own wealth breakthroughs. There's a wealth breakthrough out there waiting for everyone. And Kevin's living proof you can do it over and over again. Now, let's switch gears. If you know anything, I mean anything about real estate investing, you know the name Kim Kiyosaki. From struggling to make ends meet to a real estate portfolio of over 6,500 properties, Kim's the definition of bootstrap success. Now, here's the best part. To achieve that success, in many cases, Kim used none of her own money. Seems impossible? It's not. Here's my colleague Jeff Hayes' interview with Kim Kiyosaki.
Kim, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Thank you. So tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do.
So my name is Kim Kiyosaki. I was raised in New Jersey, just outside New York City. When I was 14, my family moved to Oregon, which was a big change. And then we took a family vacation to Hawaii. And when I was 17, and I thought that the luckiest people in the whole world lived in Hawaii, and that's where I was moving. So went to college 2 out of my 4 years in Hawaii, graduated from the University of Hawaii, and started in advertising and advertising sales. And my very first job out of college, I was fired. And I'm like, okay. But the company hired me back. And 6 months later, they fired me again. And at first I thought, what is wrong with me? Am I incompetent? And I'm like, I'm not incompetent. But what I realized is I really hated working for somebody else. And I really was going to excel better in my own business. So I was searching of what I was going to do because I had no idea of how to start a business. Wasn't around entrepreneurs growing up. My father was a salesman. And in 1984, I had my first date with Robert Kiyosaki. And on that very first date, he asked me, what do you want to do with your life? And I said, well, seeing as the way things are going, I said, I want my own business, but I don't know where to begin. And he said, well, I've started many businesses and all of my friends are entrepreneurs. And I'm like, this is where I need to be right now. And 3 months later, I had my very first business. And created a logo, embroidered it on shirts and jackets. And I have a saying that every business must have a purpose. And the purpose of this business was to fund and pay for my travel, hotel, and entry fees into business conferences all around the US. And I'd set up my little stand and I had my shirts and my sweaters and my jackets with my logo. And I sold them at all these business conferences so that I could spend a year learning how to run and grow a business. That's how I started as an entrepreneur. So being fired was actually a blessing in disguise, was the best thing that could have happened for me.
So I love this. You self-funded your education.
I did.
And-
Because I went to college with a business degree, but learned almost nothing about how to be an entrepreneur.
This need still exists, and where we continue to put people through school, through college, and somehow think that being an entrepreneur, somehow we're supposed to know that from birth.
Yes, and they keep trying to teach it in school, but it can't be taught unless somebody has actually been an entrepreneur, because you never know what you're going to face every single day. I think the keys to really being a successful entrepreneur, one is by far perseverance and resiliency. How well are you going to come back from a setback? I think that's probably the number one character trait of an entrepreneur is resiliency, because every day we're facing something we don't know, we're facing a problem, and if we back down from the problem, our business doesn't grow. We've got to push through and solve the problem, and oftentimes it's an unknown.
My mentor used to say the key to your success is how much discouragement can you take
Yes.
before you quit.
Yes, yes.
I wish it was something else, but that's the reality. So, all right, so let's go back. You've started this.
And to that point, though, that's why when you start a business, there's got to be a strong reason why you're doing it. That's why I say when it has to solve a problem, because if there's not a strong reason why, it's got to be bigger than just making money. Because if it's just to make money, exactly as you say, as you come up against those problems, you're going to quit. But if there's a bigger reason in your core, in your soul, for why you're taking on this challenge, when those tough times come, you'll keep going.
So let's go back.
Okay.
You're in your first business.
Yeah.
It's a year. You've spent a year learning. And what happens next?
Well, then I decided, okay, so I've completed the purpose of that business. And so then Robert and I talked about going into business together. So we moved from Hawaii. We were living in Hawaii, and we moved to California, and we started a business teaching entrepreneurship. And we grew that business from two offices to we had 11 offices in 7 countries. And we took that business as far, it was a great business. We were in Australia and New Zealand and Hong Kong, Canada, US, and it was a great business, but the model was very, very labor intensive and very expensive. And so to take it to the next level, we either had to redesign the entire company or let it go and start something new. So we decided at that point, we had taken the company as far as we wanted to take it. And one other thing happened, I'll tell you in a minute. But we took it as far as we wanted to take it, so we said, it's time that we end and let's go do something else. Now, adversity. So one of the things that happened is in this business, we were teaching entrepreneurial seminars. And people would come to these seminars, and actually many of them would make great changes in their life, very positive changes. Well, at the same time, there was the David Koresh,
Waco.
That whole thing was happening, and there was a minister who had written a book about cults. And so the Australian version of 60 Minutes came to film us and said, hey, we want to do this great story on you. You're making great entrepreneurs. You're having all this success. And we're like, yeah, come on in. We're an open book. We'd love to have the story done. So they film us and they do all these interviews. And in 60 Minutes of Australia airs. And here's one of our instructors, and he's on stage, and it says, cult leader. And so, long story short, we were not a cult. But it was the power of the press at that time. And so what happened was, it was called the ABC, the Australia Broadcast Corporation. They had the largest unsolicited letter writing campaign from all of our students who said, you're wrong, this is a mistake, and they were sure we were going to sue them. And we're like, you know what, this may be a sign. This might just be a sign that it's time to move on and do something else.
The door's closing.
Yeah, so we'd close the doors. So sometimes adversity can be the best thing.
So now let's go back. So now you guys, you're in California. You've 11 offices decided, okay, we're going to move on.
We're going to move on.
What's the next move?
So we started the business in California. And then in 1988, we moved to Oregon. So the business was going in Oregon. And it was 1994 when we decided to end it. And by that time also, we were also investing in real estate, rental properties. So we started that business in 1985 in California. In 1988, we moved the business to Oregon. And so we're operating it out of Oregon. 1989, started investing in real estate and rental properties. So by the time we decided to end the company in 1994, we were actually financially free. And we had, basically when we say financially free, people think we have, millions of dollars saved up and we can live for the rest of our lives on the money we have, and that was not the case. The case was that we had $10,000 a month coming in every month from our rental properties, but we only had $3,000 a month going out in living expenses. So we had more coming in passive income than was going out every month, and so at that point we were financially free. And the beauty of that is that for the first time, I was able to ask myself, what is it I really want to do with my life? Now I can take a little bit of a break, take a little bit of a breather, and have the luxury to ask myself that question. And so Robert and I we spent probably 6 to 9 months trying to figure out what is it we want to do, and do we want to do something together? Do we want to do something separate? And in the meantime, we had people constantly asking us, how did you get financially free? How'd you do it? How'd you do it? So we're like, instead of us traveling all over the world and telling people what we did, we love games. So what if we could create a game, a board game, that would teach people exactly what we did to get out of the rat race and become financially free? So we started working on that. And again, we've never made a game. We were just making it up as we go and trying to take a financial statement, an income statement and a balance sheet, and turn it into the scorecard of the game. It was like brain cells were dying every day. Sometimes we'd say, I think it's time for a 2-pitcher night. And a 2-pitcher night was after working on the game all day long, we'd go down to our local pizza parlor, get a pizza and 2 pitchers of beer. And we'd celebrate that day, and then we go back to work the next day. And we finally created this game. We actually had a gentleman that was working with us, very computer savvy. And so he would take all the numbers, because we had different deals. We had, real estate deals, we had stock deals, we had business deals, and we had the numbers and the return on investment and the cash flow. And so he took all these numbers, paychecks, downsized, children, and he ran them through a computer simulation 150,000 times to make sure that our numbers were geared up correctly. And so that game was called Cash Flow. And we launched that game in 1996. And as we were launching the game, we're like, we really need a brochure for the game. So Robert said, I'll work on it. So he started working on this brochure and kept working on it. And finally, the brochure comes out. And the brochure is a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Wow.
So we started with the game, and then the book came as a result of the game.
So it's amazing to me. I wasn't familiar with the game until a couple of years ago, and I've mentioned it. I bet it's popped up 5 or 6 times in the last year where somebody told me this is what they did. That like their fortune and their education for their kids, it was started with that game.
Yeah, that game is it was what we did step by step to become financially free.
It's amazing. It's like it deserves to live forever and hopefully replace Monopoly, which was based on a whole different principle.
Yes. And they call Cash Flow Monopoly on steroids.
There we go.
And then at one point, the New York Times came years ago to do a story on the Cash Flow game. And the journalist called us from New York and said, do you know you have a cash flow club here in New York? And I'm like, no. She goes, yeah, it's about 1,000 people.
Wow.
I'm like, what? And she goes, yeah, I think you have cash flow clubs like in other places around the world. And we're like, what? And so we started researching it, and we found, and a cash flow club is just, it could be 6 people and they just get together, or it could be 1,000 people. They get together on a regular basis and they play the game. And all of a sudden, when Robert and I heard there's 3,500 that we know of cash flow clubs, it made our hearts sing because the mission statement that we created, the mission of the Rich Dad Company from day one, was to elevate the financial well-being of humanity. And the purpose for the game was that people could teach people. And so when she said that and we started researching it and we found that all these clubs have popped up spontaneously, we're like, oh my gosh, the mission is being fulfilled. So the cash flow game is really near and dear to our heart.
Well, our tagline for our company, my partner Patrick and I, is movies that make movements. And this is, you look at the movement
Yes, yeah.
that you guys created.
Yeah.
All right, so
I wish we could say it was all planned.
No,
but it
well, you
definitely
can
wasn't.
now. You can now. The winner gets to write the history. So you can say, yeah, that was the whole plan. So go back to now. You've got this book that was going to be a brochure,
Yes.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and that had quite a life.
That did. We took it to a few publishers. They wanted nothing to do with it. So we were forced to self-publish, and we self-published. And where it started, where it got its first push, is a friend of ours in Austin, Texas, had one of those big car washes, those super car washes with the convenience store attached. And so we asked him. We said, "Hey, can we put like a couple dozen books in your car wash?" And he goes, "We don't sell books." And we're like, "Yeah, that's right. Then there's no competition." So we had originally printed 1,000 copies of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So we sent him two dozen copies. And I called him a couple of weeks later. I said, "Hey, any books sell?" And he goes, "Nope, they're all here." He goes, "Do you want them back?" I said, "No, I don't want them back. Just leave them." And then a couple of weeks went by, and I called again, and I said, "Are there any books sold?" And he goes, "They're all gone." And I'm like, "What do you mean they're all gone?" He goes, "They're gone." I said, "Well, who bought them?" He goes, "I don't know who bought them, but they're gone." Shortly thereafter, we get a phone call, and this gentleman says, "Hey, my name is Bill. I'm from Dallas, Texas. It's a good book you got here." And we're like, "You have Rich Dad, Poor Dad?" He goes, "Yep. Really like it. How many copies you got?" And we're like, "We have 1,000 less 12, or 1,000 less 2 dozen." And he goes, "I got the 2 dozen. He said, "I'll take the rest." And we're like, "Who are you?" And he's like, "I'm with a small company called Amway." So he was a part of Amway, and that's where the book started. A lot of it came through the network marketing industry, because we talk about passive income and residual income, which is very aligned to the philosophy of the network marketing industry. So it started there, and then the book kept growing, and we kept marketing. We did a lot of PR. It kept selling. Next thing you know, it's on the Wall Street Journal bestseller list. It's on Business Week bestseller list. And then it makes the New York Times bestseller list. We were the only self-published book on the New York Times bestseller list. And then in 2000, a woman named Oprah called. And there is an Oprah effect. And Robert went on her show. The entire show was about Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And Oprah is syndicated to 150 countries. So overnight, Rich Dad, Poor Dad went to 150 countries.
Wow.
Yep, and it just kept going from there. So it hits a chord with people, and I think there's a little bit of a spiritual thread throughout the book as well. It's not just about making money; it's about really, having the life you want.
Let's pick up that spiritual theme, and in your personal life. One of the things we've been surprised at a lot of the very successful people that we've interviewed in this series, it's not the greedy, the way Hollywood a lot of times portrays people that have a lot of money. They have a spiritual basis to their work.
Yeah, I think it is. When we talk about the problem that every business must solve a problem, and the problem we saw is that there's no financial education in the school system. And Robert's Rich Dad said money may not be the most important thing in life, but it affects everything that's important. It affects your level of health care, your level of education. It affects how you live day to day. So it may not be the most important thing, but it affects everything that is important. And so the impetus for us was that because it wasn't being taught in school, we decided to take on the task of educating people all over the world about real financial education. So our reason for doing it, our why for doing it, wasn't about the money. We want to make money, but the purpose of doing it was purely financial education. So it started there. And then we also follow the principles of Buckminster Fuller, who was an inventor, philosopher, futurist, who he dedicated his life to the betterment of humanity. And so we follow his principles. And he talks about great spirit. Robert and I would say we're very spiritual, not religious, but we're very spiritual. And basically he talked about how can you be of most contribution? How can you do the greatest good? He has a saying that we always followed, which is, the more people I serve, the more effective I become. So we operate from that point of view. And whenever anything looks negative or there's something that we weren't expecting and it was like, looks like a problem, looks like a bad thing, we always know something good will come out of it. So we're always looking for the lesson in the mistakes, the lesson in the failures, the lessons in the negative happenings in life. We always look for the lesson, and that makes us smarter. So I think from that point of view, it's kind of a bit of a spiritual path there.
Well, I think I know enough about you to know that and you guys, you eat your own cooking. Is like, so you taught a lot about real estate, taught a lot about, and it's also, you really are really large real estate investors.
Yeah.
Talk about, if you would, what you guys have built and how you built it.
There's real teachers and there's fake teachers. So if I ever want to learn something from somebody, I want to learn from somebody who's doing what it is I want to do. So academia is full of fake teachers. They tell you what to do, they tell you how to do it, but they've never done it themselves. Or I know a lot of consultants. They'll tell you what to do, but they've never done it themselves. So what Robert and I teach are only things that we've done. So my real estate investing started in 1989 in Portland, Oregon, and Robert started to explain to me what his rich dad taught him about investing, and specifically real estate investing. And he goes, "Okay, go buy something." And I'm like, "What do you mean, go buy something? I don't know what you're talking about." So I stumbled and bumbled along, and sure enough, just a few blocks from where we lived, there was this little 2-bedroom, 1-bath house, and put an offer in. Offer was accepted, and as soon as that offer got accepted, I was scared to death. I'm like, oh my God, what if I make a mistake? What if I lose money? What if the roof leaks? What if the tenant moves out? What if I humiliate myself? All this doubt was going on, and I was really nervous because I've never done this before, and it was $45,000, and I had to come up with a $5,000 down payment, which we did not have. So not only am I afraid of losing money, first we got to find the money, and then what if I lose it? So all these doubts were going on in my mind. The voice was just chattering. But finally, push came to shove, and the day came to sign the papers, so I stepped over the line. We figured out how to get the money, which was a great thing because a lot of people say, oh, I'll start investing when I have the money. I'll start my own business when I have the money. You never have the money because there's always an emergency or something that comes up. So the fact that we didn't have the money for that property or the next 10 properties was the best thing because it forced us to get very, very, very creative. It comes out of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He says, don't say I can't afford it, ask how can I afford it. Don't say I can't do it, ask how can I do it, because that opens up your mind and gets you thinking. So we got very, very creative in how to finance properties when we didn't have the money. So long story short, I signed those papers, we bought that house, and every month I would collect the rent, I'd pay the expenses, I'd pay the mortgage, and at the end of the month I'd have a whopping $25 positive cash flow. And that's how I started.
And then take us through the saga a little bit further. What does that look like now?
Today, the formula is the same. It's the same formula that we use today on a 400-unit apartment building as that little 2-bedroom, 1-bath house. So we bought the next property and the next property, then we bought a 4-plex, then a 6-plex, then a 12-plex, and kept stepping up. And today, I'd say we have about 6,500 units. We have commercial property. We have 4 golf courses, 2 resorts, plus other, plus oil and gas, silver and gold, things like that. But the key is it's not rocket science, and people are very, very afraid of the word debt. they think of debt as a 4-letter word, but there is such a thing as good debt. Bad debt is your credit cards, your personal house, your car loans, your student debt. That's bad debt that you have to pay for. But good debt is debt that you borrow, for example, on rental properties for businesses that actually makes you money. So sometimes just getting a mind shift change, a paradigm shift around the way you look at money and the way you define words, such as debt, can make a huge difference.
When you have a lot of debt, even good debt, what about in a downturn where if all of a sudden property values go down?
Oh, that's a great question. That's a great question. Because there probably will be a downturn pretty soon. We're expecting it. A lot of people will buy high-end properties. They'll buy the luxury units and the luxury apartments and the luxury buildings. We don't do that. We buy middle-of-the-road properties because for exactly that reason, if the markets turn, then the first people that are going to downsize are the people from the high luxury units to the lesser expensive ones. So we're middle of the road. So we might take a little bit of a hit. In 2008, we took a little bit of a hit, but nothing serious because people that moved out, other people moved in. So it's, again, a lot of it is just common sense and getting your ego out of the way as much as possible, which is why, personally, I think women make great investors of all sorts, of real estate and paper assets, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, a business. An opinion of mine is that women are a little more practical. They're less emotional when it comes to money. And once they understand money and how it works and how to grow it, I see women become great, great, great investors. I think one of the main problems for women is not only have we not been taught anything about money, but what we have been taught is to depend upon somebody else for our financial well-being, be it a husband or a family member or the government. That's actually what we've been taught since we've been a little girl. Prince Charming will come, and is he a good provider? All of these things is conditioned into us to not depend upon ourselves, and that's one of my key missions, is to teach women about money and about investing so that they can depend upon themselves and not have to depend upon somebody else. Because all too often, we women, as we get older, find ourselves in a financial crisis due to divorce, death of a spouse, or just really bad money management. And the next thing you know, these things happen. She has no idea where the money is, if there is any money, and she ends up broke. So I don't want women to become a statistic. I want them to be empowered to take care of themselves financially.
I know that's important to you, and I love
Yeah.
that. Let's just do a scenario there. So let's take a 38 or 42-year-old woman who finds herself widowed or divorced. She's got a couple of kids, credit card payments, less income. Maybe she's been out of the workforce for a while and she's re-entering it. And she manages to get lucky enough to sit next to you at a dinner and looks at you and says, okay, I want to win before this is over. What do I do? What would you tell her? What's a strategy for her to...
That's a great question. Well, the first thing she needs to do is handle survival. So maybe it is to get a job or to get a part-time job. She's got to handle survival and get that stable. At the same time, the first thing I would say to do is start learning the language of money, because the jargon, there's so much jargon out there, and all these financial advisors, financial planners, stockbrokers, real estate brokers, they love to throw out all this jargon, and I think it's just a guise to confuse you and keep you at their mercy. Like, oh, you need me because you're not going to understand this. If you just understand the language of money, for example, in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, asset versus liability. Rich Dad said, an asset is something that puts money in your pocket whether you work or not. And a liability is something that takes money out of your pocket, right? Well, so this jewelry, and in the banker's world, he or she would say, oh, well, that's an asset. Well, if I sell it, it's an asset. But as long as it's just sitting on my finger, it's just stuff. right? Or your car is an asset. Well, every month you're paying money out of your pocket for gas and insurance and maybe a car loan, so it's a liability. So one of the keys is not calling liabilities assets. It gets people very, very confused. An asset is something that will make you money every single month, whether you work or not. So understanding the language is number one. Then number two, I would say you just got to get some education. Take a seminar, go online, start learning about, there's 4 asset classes. There's business, real estate, paper, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and commodities, gold, silver, oil, coffee, soybeans. And as you're learning about these different asset classes, you'll find that there's one of them that speaks to you more than the other. So I've taken stock option classes, and I've done my darndest to learn it and sit in front of that screen and make some trades, and my mind just doesn't work that way, and I don't want to sit still all day. But when I found out about real estate, and I went for that first real estate deal in 1989, that was my game. I loved it. I love walking around the property. I love looking at where's the opportunity, what can we do here to make it better, how can we increase the income, how do we get tenants? It's a marketing issue. It's a business, and I love it. So you've got to figure out which asset class you want to focus on, and then start really small. Put a little money into the game. Just a little money, because there's going to be a huge learning curve. So one thing I tell women is, today it would cost about $20 US. You go buy a 1-ounce silver coin. And by parting with that 20 US dollars, all of a sudden you'll get interested, and you've got this coin in your hand, you'll get interested and you'll go online and you'll see, what's the price of silver doing today? Is it up? Is it down? You'll start being attracted to articles about silver, gold, precious metals, just because you've put a little money down. So I think that's really, really important. You can talk about it all day long, but until you part with some money, until you're really in the game, nothing's going to start for you. So that's how I would start.
What you're saying is so true. I interviewed some Bitcoin experts, and so I bought a Bitcoin back when it was less than 3,000.
Yeah.
I had never checked the price of Bitcoin ever, and I said, look, I'm just buying this for 10 years. It's just a small amount of money. And now, twice a month I'm checking the price of Bitcoin, even though I'm like, I'm not going to sell it, I'm not going to do anything.
Yep.
But suddenly, where your attention goes, that grows.
Yeah.
And so
Yes, exactly.
I love the investing in education, and even going back to your first example of where you self-funded. Your step one was to self-fund yourself in learning.
But that is the key, lifelong learning. You never stop learning, because as soon as you stop learning, you're going to stop growing. And for example, I was with a dear friend of mine, and we're partners in real estate, Robert and Ken and I. And he said, I haven't even told you this yet. He goes, I have a new real estate investment. I'm like, what? And he's investing in billboards. So he bought billboards, a big billboard on this land, and he put up a billboard, but then he discovered digital billboards. If you do a digital billboard, you can have like 4 or 5 ads at the same time. And so he's always looking for opportunities and new ways, but it's still a real estate play. It's still a real estate deal, but he's always learning new ways to invest his money.
Yeah, and billboards are a cash flow play.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
there's not a lot of employees required
No.
for that to, those are always interesting. Well, let's look at if a 58-year-old dentist who invested in his practice and worked, but his income is tied to his hours, working, and now is approaching retirement age. Is it too late to start in a real estate, if that's the
No, I don't think it's ever too late to start. I know of a gentleman, he was 64 when he started, and also a professional. I think one of the mistakes we make is we spend everything we make. The savings rates in America are dismal. People don't save, and I'm not an avid. I don't advocate saving for the long term. I advocate saving for your next investment. And so one of the things that Robert and I did early on is we called it the 3 piggy banks. And what we did is, this was a time when we had very little money. We had more money going out than was coming in. But we made a rule that with every single dollar that came into our household, we would take 30% off the top. 10% before we paid any bills. That money comes in 10% into a savings account, 10% into an investment account, and 10% into a tithing or charity account. And we did that religiously with every single dollar. And it was amazing how fast it built up. And it was amazing how fast you figured out how to pay those bills. And we did. So today we still follow the same rule. The percentages are just higher. But when you get into the habit, it's not how much. It's not necessarily you have to put 10%. It's the habit of putting that money aside, because it will grow really, really quickly. And that can be your first investment funding for you. So going back to our 64-year-old guy, he started small, started investing in real estate. He bought a duplex and he bought a fourplex. And this was over time. He had saved up some money, and so he bought that, and he was making like $8,000 a month. And that was a great start for him. That was almost $100,000 a year without him working. And then what happens is you can live quite, not necessarily frugally, but keep putting some of that cash flow aside from the properties, and that cash flow then funds your next property, and then funds your next property. So it's not rocket science. It's just, number one is kind of developing the habit, getting some education, getting that first deal done, and then learning and keep growing.
To me, this almost goes back all the way to the beginning, to the cash flow game.
Yeah.
It's getting your mind, just the basics of this to build on. I marvel at this, that I've had a long entrepreneurial career with spectacular highs and equally spectacular
We all have.
crashes.
We all
When
have.
you auger one of these into the ground, it is not pretty. And if I had it all to do over again, I would have built what you guys built, where you made yourself financially free, and that's the point where you can decide to take these entrepreneurial risks.
Yeah, that was the luxury point where we said, what is it we want to do? And I love that you say the cash flow game, because we are very much getting back to the core mission of why we started the Rich Dad Company, and that was the cash flow game, and it was people teaching people. So we actually have launched a whole new initiative where we are putting a lot of time and attention into these cash flow clubs, supporting the clubs, giving them more education, actually letting them turn it into a business if they want to. Some people just want to play the game and they want to learn, and they teach each other and they learn from each other and they invest from there. But we have something that's very unique that nobody else has, which is the cash flow game. So we really want to applaud the people that are using it and playing it and learning from it and actually teaching other people financial education. That's the core to us, and that's where we're going to put all of our time and attention.
Well, I love the movement that you started, and what you guys, I don't know, really I can't think of anyone else who's had a more positive impact on people's finances than what you and Robert built.
Yeah, thank you.
And I love that you did that, and love that you're still enthralled with it today.
Yeah, I am. I'm working on a new real estate deal right now.
Of course you are.
And we're working on those cash flow games, and Robert's writing more books. And I think the most important thing is when we travel all over the world, when somebody comes up and says, thank you for the work you've done, that's the most humbling thing of all. And we don't do it for the money. We don't do it for the acknowledgement. We set out to, as Buckminster Fuller said, where can you be of best contribution? He said, don't ask what it is you want to do. What is it God wants you to do? And so that's what we keep following. What are we here to do? Where can we make the greatest contribution? And that's what drives us.
It's so great. Kim, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeff.
Kim just showed you the blueprint for true freedom. Owning assets that pay you while you sleep, go golfing, or hang out with your family. Owning income-producing real estate is one of the best ways to go from zero to a wealth breakthrough in no time flat. Now, let me ask you a question. Do you know what the ultimate wealth breakthrough blueprint is? Have you ever heard of it? Or let me ask you this one. Do you know how to retire rich on just $190 a month? For the answer to both questions, let me introduce you to one of the most revolutionary thinkers in America today when it comes to wealth building strategies. I'd like you to meet Alexander Green. Jeff talked with Alexander recently, and here's what happened.
So, Alec, thank you for being here. I've been looking forward to this interview.
Thanks for having me.
So, tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do.
Okay, well, my name is Alec Green. I live in Charlottesville, Virginia, and Orlando, Florida, share homes there. And I'm the chief investment strategist of the Oxford Club, which is a private club that's dedicated to showing people how to achieve and maintain financial independence. And essentially, I write about what's happening in the world and the economy and the markets and make recommendations that people can act on to further their net worth.
So, how did you get to this? There has to be a story here.
There's a long and winding road.
Good, let's take it.
Well, let me begin by saying I've always been fascinated by money. I came from a very middle-class household in a small town, Stanton, Virginia. I often say I grew up in a Norman Rockwell painting, a little quiet town in the Shenandoah Valley. And we had a few people in our town who were very wealthy, and I sort of looked up to those people. Every time they needed to raise money for some project or some worthy cause, whatever, they would go to these people first. And I always thought, like, wow, what did these people do? They must be a little smarter, a little sharper, worked a little harder. And I was fascinated by money, how it's earned, how it compounds, how it's created, and so forth. But unfortunately, in school, they really don't teach you much about money.
Right.
You know, most high schools in the United States still don't even teach basic personal finance. It's as if money is something that either doesn't really matter or you're just supposed to figure it out on your own. And so people graduate from high school and they don't know what compound interest is, or a 401k, or what an adjustable rate mortgage is, or why we even have a stock market. And then oftentimes they go off to college and their professors tell them that we live in this unfortunate economic system. It's based on greed and selfishness and exploitation, which is such a mischaracterization, because the beautiful thing about capitalism is it says you can have anything you want if you just provide enough other people with what they want. I mean, what a beautiful foundation. So that's not greed and selfishness. That's how do you get rich? By helping other people get what they want. And the more people you help, the richer you'll get. People like Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates have helped millions and millions of people, probably billions, and so they're billionaires themselves. So I've always been fascinated by money. I think a lot of people are fascinated in how to spend it, but I'm interested in how to grow it. And so I majored in business and psychology at college, and then not long afterwards I found myself working in the money management industry, and I became my passion to show people how to achieve and maintain financial independence. And so I retired from Wall Street actually almost 20 years ago now, and I've devoted my professional career to showing everyday people how to become wealthy. And I say how to become wealthy because there are principles of wealth creation that are well understood, but just not by most people. So I talk about those things, write about them regularly, and show people the path to financial independence.
Okay, so you're in the dead center of the whole purpose of this series, and when we talk about this financial illiteracy, and I know PhDs and medical doctors that still know nothing about money.
I had them as clients. You're exactly right.
So let's go back, starting from that blank canvas, these principles you're talking about. How can we help somebody today, what they need to know about creating wealth?
Okay, well, the first thing they should know is everybody should be rich in America. When I say everybody, you might have seen the story a few years ago of this fellow who died in Vermont, and he had two jobs. He was a gas station attendant, and he was a janitor at JCPenney's. And the community was stunned when he died and left $8.6 million to the local library. And how had he done that? All he had done is work, save, invest, and compound his money over a long period of time. Again, gas station attendant and JCPenney's janitor. Those were his two jobs. No great inheritance, no great connections, no high-paying job, no high education, nothing. Okay, so I always say, if you're not rich in this country, one of these things is true. You either haven't worked, or you worked and you didn't save, or you saved but you didn't invest, or you invested but you didn't do it properly, or you did it properly and successfully, but you couldn't keep your hands off the money. You spent it on the new boat, the bigger house, whatever. So really, There was a fellow by the name of Dr. Thomas Stanley who wrote a book called The Millionaire Next Door. It's probably 20 years old now. And he surveyed the nation's most affluent people to determine how they became wealthy. And I think the conventional wisdom is if you're rich in this country, you founded a computer company in your garage, or you play third base for the Yankees, or you had a million-selling record, whatever. That's not the case. I mean, those people are rich, and for those reasons. But most people simply worked and saved and invested and compounded their money over a long period of time, and that's something that's open to anybody if they're willing to work, save, invest, and compound.
So if somebody is my age, 60 years old, is it too late to right my financial ship?
It's never too late to get started, no matter where you are. If you're later in life, you're going to need to save more. You're going to probably need to earn a higher rate of return, and you may need to work a little longer in order to let your money compound. But it's never too late to get started. There's never a bad time to make a good investment.
So let's take somebody that's, like I'm thinking about, I've got kids that are now in their 30s.
Yeah.
What would you map out for them as a strategy to end up wealthy?
Well, the first thing you should tell your kids is they have a huge asset that you don't have, lots of time ahead of them. I mean, I'm about the same age as you are. So I know that if I were starting now, it'd be tough for me to develop the net worth I have now. But they are in a situation where if they save just a little bit of money, for instance, let me give you an example. If your kids save $190 a month, and they may have to scrape and cut some corners to do that. If they saved $190 a month and nothing more, and they'd invested in, say, the S&P 500 index fund, which has generated a 10% average compounded return for over 100 years, and they earned nothing more than that 10% return. From the age of 25 to 65, they would have over $1 million if they reinvested their dividends. $190 a month, every month for 40 years, you've got over $1 million. And yet, look at the United States today. 40% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. 40% say they couldn't get their hands on $400 in an emergency. Now,
Wow.
if someone can't work, has mental or physical disabilities, I'm fully for a social safety net for people, for what Ronald Reagan used to call the truly needy. But that doesn't describe 40% of Americans. What's happening is people are spending everything they're making. They're not saving, they're not investing, and they're not compounding their money. And if they would get on the right track, starting today, then they can have a financial future that's much more secure than otherwise. And think about it. What is money? Money is power. It doesn't matter whether you're male or female, old or young, black or white, gay or straight, educated or not. If you have money, you have power in the best sense. You have security, peace of mind, choices about how you can live your life, where you can live, what you're going to do, who you're going to do it with. You have all those choices. If you don't have money, life is a constant strain. You're worried about your bills. You're worried about your future. You're worried about being able to help people in need, your kids, or the charities that you want to donate to. So it makes the whole difference, and that's why it's such a shame that financial literacy in this country is so low, and it's such a good thing that you're doing this series to teach people the basic financial literacy they need to move forward and enjoy some type of financial security.
So it's interesting. I know you have specific strategies, and I know people come to you because of your experience. But a lot of what you're talking about is just this preparatory mindset.
It is.
The delayed gratification of choosing wealth over a new boat.
You know what? It's almost like raising a garden. It's beautiful to plant the seeds and nurture the seeds and pull out the weeds and watch them grow. And at the end, you have this beautiful garden. If you can start to enjoy the process and not just think about what you're sacrificing now. And you don't, this doesn't mean that you don't enjoy yourself. It's a matter of finding balance. No, I'm not saying that someone should save every penny they possibly can. Right. But if they're saving nothing, I mean, let me give you an example. If someone told you tomorrow that you're going to have to live on 10% less, by hook or by crook, you would find a way to live on 10% less. Most people could save at least 10% of their after-tax take-home pay. They should be doing that, and if they could afford to save more, they should be doing that. So it's just a matter of getting into that mindset and realizing that what you're going to realize down the road is a level of independence and freedom that other people can only dream about.
Yeah, I had a business coach several years ago that, like, a savings account is not exciting. It's like, I remember as a kid, my parents we had an old savings and loan, and my parents making me put money from my paper out in my savings account. And I would much rather convert it into Snickers and something useful like that.
Right.
And that boringness. And then this business coach I had talked to me about setting up a wealth account. And it's a separate from a savings account, and the account was something I was going to build for me to build wealth. And for some reason, that was exciting to me. I'm not just saving money that I don't get to spend. I'm building wealth. If somebody is willing to build a wealth account, what advice are you giving people now of how to build that wealth inside the money inside their wealth account?
Well, I would begin by saying that when you talk about a savings account, there is a truism that if you take very low risk, you're going to earn very low returns.
Right.
So you're going to have to get comfortable with the idea that to earn higher than average returns, you're going to have to see fluctuations, sometimes pretty wide fluctuations, in the value of your investments from month to month and even week to week and day to day. I encourage people not to watch their investments too closely. It's not necessary. If you're investing to reach a financial goal 10 or 20 or 30 years down the road, what the stock market does this week or this month is totally irrelevant. And one of the things that's not taught, that should be taught, is the stock market has given, on average, a 10% return for the last 200 years. And I encourage people to read an investment classic by Dr. Jeremy Siegel of the Wharton School called Stocks for the Long Run. And he shows that over long periods of time, stocks generate much higher than returns than any other type of investment. And he goes all over the world. And one of the most interesting things in the book, I thought, was even if you had invested in the German stock market and the Japanese stock market on the eve of World War II, and even though those countries faced total economic and political destruction, 30 years later, Japanese and German stocks had returned exactly what U.S. stocks had returned.
Wow.
It shows the incredible resilience. So even when we have wars, recessions, depressions, corrections, all kinds of setbacks, stocks are resilient. And the reason for that is we all have economic needs, not least of which are food, clothing, shelter, healthcare,
Right.
et cetera, okay? It's not the government that provides these things, it's private businesses. And so they have to find a way to offer these goods and services and make a profit. And over time, as their sales and their profits rise, so does the value of the business. And so all these stocks are doing is reflecting the rising value of the companies themselves. And so if you're a young person especially, and you're looking at investment goals decades away, you should essentially be 100% invested in stocks. And yes, you're going to see some hair-raising bumps along the way, that's inevitable. But if you can resist the urge to panic and sell, to do something, unless that do something is to add to your stocks while they're cheap, that's something you should do. And when I'm writing my investment letters, when those periods come along, like during the Great Recession, I said very clearly, you're looking at one of the great buying opportunities of your lifetime. And you can either panic and sell and regret it, or you can add to your holdings, reduce your average costs, and reap the benefits as the market returns to normal. And that's exactly what's happened. We've had this incredible, almost 11-year run. We'll have downturns again in the future, and that's fine because behind every bear market is another bull market. And so don't worry about the people that tell you about, a bear market's coming. Yeah, a bear market is coming, and another one after that, another one after that. But the history of the stock market is higher highs and higher lows. So the first thing I would say is save, yes, but invest your money in the best returning asset of all time, common stocks.
And is your advice to your readers, is it mostly this long-term strategy?
No, it's partly a long-term strategy. I wrote a book. It was a national bestseller about 12 years ago called The Gone Fishing Portfolio. And all the Gone Fishing Portfolio is a portfolio of Vanguard index funds that you invest in and you rebalance them once a year. It takes 20 minutes a year. The rest of the time you're encouraged to go fishing, which is why it's called
Yes.
The Gone Fishing Portfolio. And that's all it takes is a few minutes to set it up and 20 minutes once a year to rebalance it. And that's a long-term asset allocation plan. And if that's all someone did, they would probably earn a generous return. And $100,000 invested in that portfolio in the inception is worth almost $500,000 now. And it's a very conservative portfolio. It's 30% bonds. But most people want to be more active. Like, for instance, if you're in your 60s and you say, wow, I should have saved more, I should have saved earlier, that you probably want to do something to earn even higher rates of return. And so for those people, I suggest they own individual stocks. Because, for instance, I've been a shareholder not just for years, but for decades of Apple and Amazon and Netflix and other companies that have gone up many, many fold.
Right.
And so you get a performance boost from owning companies that outperform the benchmark, the averages by a substantial margin.
So what are companies right now that are the Amazon, Netflix of the future?
Well, we wish we could know.
But you knew Apple and...
But you know what? Here's the thing. I won't try to brag about any great perspicacity when I bought those stocks. Here's an interesting thing that happened to me. One of the things is, if you're a learner and you're interested in how to make your money grow faster, I found that if I listened to the smartest people at managing money, I could do better with my own money. And so two of the people I used to listen to were Warren Buffett, who decades ago, as now, was running Berkshire Hathaway, and Peter Lynch, who's retired now, but was the manager of the Fidelity Magellan Fund, and he is the best performing equity manager of all time. So one month, I just happened to be reading some things that these guys had written, and first of all, Peter Lynch said, you know, if you patronize a company, you really ought to consider owning its shares. Because if you like the company, probably other people like the company. And if other people like the company, then probably the sales and earnings are going to grow. And so you should consider investing in the companies you patronize yourself. And I thought to myself, hey, that makes a lot of sense. And the same month, I read something from Warren Buffett, which was equally interesting. And he said, you know, the capital gains tax is not a tax on capital gains. It's a tax on transactions. And by that he meant, if you don't sell a stock, you don't owe any capital gains tax. And that's one of the reasons he's one of the richest men in the world. His fortune is almost entirely untaxed. So I thought to myself, wow, if I buy the companies that I patronize and I don't sell them, then I could have a huge gain and no taxes. Well, I was a Mac guy back when Windows ruled supreme, and there was no such thing as an iPhone or even an iPod. This is how long ago I bought my Apple.
Right.
But I bought the stock and I held it. And Amazon, I mean, I was using Amazon as an internet user from the very beginning, so I bought some Amazon. And Netflix, I had a neighbor who came over with that little red envelope they used to put the DVDs in. He showed me that. I said, I'm going to buy some of that. This is before they had streaming or so. So I had no conception that Apple was going to become what it did, and Amazon was going to become what it did, and Netflix would become what it did. And quite frankly, there are some companies I invested in that went right down the tubes. But a company can only drop 100% in value. It can go up a hundred-fold or more, which those stocks are all up over 100-fold. So it wasn't some fantastic business insight that I had. It was the fact that I patronize these companies and I don't want to pay taxes. I owned them all in a non-retirement account, and if I'd have sold them, I'd owed a big capital gains tax, so I just held them. And now, for instance, the dividends I get off of Apple are many, many times the value of my original investment.
Wow.
So for example, with Amazon, the annual dividends that I receive are many times the amount of the total investment I made in the stock originally. So that's what happens when you hold on to a great company for a long period of time. And I'd love to be able to sit here and tell you what the Apple and the Amazon and the Netflix are of tomorrow, but we'll never really know until we're looking in the rearview mirror.
Right.
And that's why you want to own a diversified portfolio of great companies. And the truth of the matter is, most people would have a small fortune for themselves if they'd gone out and bought some shares of the company that they have their cell phone plan through, like Verizon or AT&T, or that they bank with, like Bank of America or JP Morgan, or car brand they buy, Ford or BMW. I mean, over the years, these stocks have gone up and up and up. So you don't have to be a macroeconomist. You don't have to be a market timer or a fantastic stock picker. That strategy I mentioned is just about buying the companies you patronize and hanging on to them. If you got to the point where you thought that Ford was making lousy cars instead of great cars, you'd probably want to sell the stock. But if you continue to be a happy customer and you like the new models and you like the quality and you like the prices, it would be a good reason to hang on.
And I like this concept because it offers consistency with my own values. If I see a company that I think is doing good in the world, I would actually enjoy having that in my portfolio. If I have a company that I think is making the world a worse place, I will enjoy not having that in my portfolio.
You sounds like you'd be interested in socially conscious investing. That's become a big deal.
And it's interesting where I believe that companies just doing well, whether they're making a social contribution or making a social contribution. Like capitalism, a rising tide lifts all boats.
Right.
And so this was missing for me in the first part of my financial career, is participating in this, and I literally had to be shown the joy of being a part of it, but I really like your philosophy of pick companies that you like, that you patronize. Yeah, I like owning Apple because I spend enough on Apple that the company can probably do okay just on me.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Believe me, my Apple stock has paid for all the Apple products I've bought over the years many times over.
So what are things that have your interest right now or that you're recommending to your readers right now?
Well, I use a number of different strategies, and let me just explain one particular strategy and how it works and why. One of the things that I've done very well with over the years is buying the same stocks that the insiders are buying. Now, in today's world, anybody who knows anything about anything is called a Wall Street insider. But from a legal standpoint, an insider is an officer, a director, which means a member of the board of directors, or a beneficial owner, which means he owns 10% or more of the outstanding shares of the company. And these people have access to material, non-public information about the future prospects of the business. And so when these people go in the market to buy or sell their own company shares, they have to file what's called a Form 4 with the SEC detailing how many shares they bought on what date at what price. And this information becomes immediately available. And so I'm tracking these SEC filings on a daily basis. And so when I see that the CEO of a company, the president, the chief legal counsel, any of the insiders, buying millions of dollars worth of their own company stock with their own money at the current market prices, then we ride their coattails, and no investment strategy is foolproof, but generally it works off. In fact, there's been lots of academic studies that have shown that 6 months after an insider buys his own company stock, the shares tend to be significantly higher than the market. So what I often do is just recommend stocks based on heavy insider buying by the officers and directors.
That's great because people generally act in their own self-interest, their own best interest.
True. There are lots of reasons that an insider might sell his own company shares that have nothing to do with the outlook of the business. He might be diversifying his portfolio. He might be putting his kids to an expensive private school. Maybe he's getting divorced and he has to sell half his shares, who knows? But there's only one reason that the insiders would buy huge amounts of their own company stock with their own money, and that is given all they know about the company, about its customers, its employees, its suppliers, its competitors, including all sorts of material non-public information, they feel that the stock is trading for a lot less than what it's worth. So it tends to be a very good signal.
If you were just going to do one thing to enter the market, would that be the strategy?
If I was going to buy individual stocks and I could only follow one strategy, that would be the one strategy I'd follow. I've used other techniques that are also very effective, but I think that the value of this is, I mean, it kind of just rings everybody's bell as well, of course. Nobody knows more about these companies than the people running it, and maybe they're not 100% right, but they're going to be right more than they're wrong. And so if I had a diversified portfolio of stocks being accumulated by the insiders, that'd be a pretty good way to go.
Yeah, it's what strikes me about this is I know that the person is sincere if he's betting his own money. Now, he can be sincerely wrong, but at least I'm on the sincere side of the equation.
Right. I will give you an example of when it didn't work out, because I want to say that there's no foolproof investment technique. I mean, whether you're looking at growth, value, arbitrage, insider buying, nothing's foolproof. John Scully, when he came in from Pepsi and kicked out Steve Jobs at Apple, he not only bought millions of dollars of the stock, he mortgaged his home, he bought all the stock, and then he drove the company into the ground. This was actually right when I bought Apple was when Steve Jobs first came back. So sometimes the insiders are wrong. In fact, he was really what was wrong. I mean, Apple is not the culture of Pepsi, and he tried to turn it into just another Fortune 500 company, which is not what Apple is. A kind of classic company. It's not that kind of a business. So sometimes the insiders are wrong, but more often than not, they're right, and they know things that you can't know. People often will ask me, like, well, what did that chairman know when he bought those shares back then they were so low? You can't really know what it is that they know. Later on, you'll find out that the earnings come in better than expected, or there's a new product launch, but that's just it. They know all sorts of things that are going on behind the scenes that those of us on the outside looking in couldn't possibly know. They know about the new products. They know if the company's considering any takeovers or being sought as a takeover themselves. They know whether any litigation is about to be settled. They know if the company's gained or lost any major customers. They just know all sorts of things, and as time goes by, these things become news, and the news moves the stock higher.
So every public company has insiders, so that that gives you a pool of every public company in the world. How do you narrow that focus a little bit in your world?
Right, yeah, it'd be great if you just saw an insider buy a few shares, then you buy shares and everybody makes money, but like most things in life, it's not quite that easy. I do quite a bit of due diligence, and here's what I'm looking for. The first thing I'm looking at is the size of the transactions. I don't want to buy a stock that someone bought $50,000 over 100. I wanted to buy millions of dollars worth of the stock because greater volume means more conviction. I'm looking at the track record of the insider. Has he bought the stock in the past? And if he bought it before, did he buy it low and sell it high? And oftentimes an officer at one company will sit on the board of directors at another company. Well, that's also public information. So I look at those stocks he bought as a board member. Did he buy those shares high and buy them low and sell them high? And the better their track record in the past, the higher I score their insider buying now. I'm looking for widespread insider buying. It's great if the CEO's buying some shares, but if the president's buying shares, the chief legal counsel's buying shares, the chairman's buying shares, I like to see some reinforcement. I often look for what I call the divergence indicator, and by that I mean ordinarily when you see insider buying, there's been a problem at the company. There's been an earnings miss or a product recall or a class action suit that's knocked the stock down, and the insiders will come in and start buying the stock. And what that generally means is, yes, we got a problem, but it's not the end of the world, and there's been an overreaction of the stock. But paradoxically, when the insiders buy at the high end of the range, it's an even better signal. And you might think, that seems kind of crazy that the insiders would be buying at the high when they could have been buying at the low. So why would the insiders pile into the stock at the high end of the range? What I've learned that this means is when the insiders buy at the high, what they're essentially saying is, yes, the market recognizes that things are good here, but it still doesn't recognize just how good things are. I mean, things are even better than people think. So it seems counterintuitive, but if a stock is hitting new highs and the insiders are buying at the same time, those stocks tend to really take off. So I'm looking at all sorts of additional factors in addition to the fact that just some insiders are buying some shares at the company where they work.
So this simple idea that I loved buying with insiders, then you go into the detail on it, it's actually fairly labor intensive. So I'm getting a sense that it's not just you with a green visor on sitting at your desk figuring all this out. What does your support staff look like?
Well, I have quite a few dedicated researchers that are looking at this information, collating it for me every week. I'm looking at every single company that has insider buying, but I'm going to see the biggest insider buys first. So I'm narrowing it down to the biggest buys by the most knowledgeable people in the companies that I think have the best prospects going forward. So it is very labor intensive in that we're going through the electronic filings at the SEC. We're digging into the companies because it's great to see the insider buying, but what's the sales outlook? What's the earnings outlook? Is the company earning a higher return on equity? Have they got new products coming out? Is there strong institutional support? What do the technical indicators on the stock look like? So we take all of these things into account. And really, it's just a matter of continually winnowing out stocks so that you start with a large number and you get a smaller and smaller, and then in the very end, you're left with just a couple of candidates to choose from, and those are the ones I make my recommendations on.
And then you're not compensated by these companies in any way?
No. They don't. They have no idea who I even am. But this is the great thing. This is public information. I can tell you all the smart money. The hedge fund managers and other big Wall Street bigwigs, they're watching what the insiders are doing like a hawk. They know exactly what this means. And, here's the surprising thing, though. What will often happen is a CEO or chairman will buy millions of dollars worth of his own company stock with his own money. It hits the wire, and on the news, the stock spikes up. But then time goes by. There's been a delay in the trade deal with China. The Fed is not going to cut rates anymore, whatever. And the stock starts coming right back down. And I'm telling you, within a couple of weeks, you can buy it cheaper than the chairman did. So if you just know what's going on and watch carefully and pick your spots, you'd be surprised that you can actually buy these stocks cheaper than the insiders did. It happens all the time.
But going all the way back to the beginning, like this to me sounds like fun, but it's all based on the mindset of taking some money out of your spending and putting it into your wealth.
Yeah, I often say, if you don't work and you don't save, I can't help you. And that's why I think that we're in a tough moment, because I think a lot of millennials tend to think that if they vote for the right person who will redistribute wealth in the right way, that they will somehow get the money they need to. That's not going to work. It's never worked. That's just not the American way. If you want to change economic inequality, the only economic inequality that matters, which is your own, it's you have to take action. You have to work. You have to save. You have to invest. You can't vote for somebody who's going to redistribute it to you. It's really just not going to happen. It's a pipe dream. And I have to say that when I was a young man and I was indigent, I didn't have savings, I didn't have health insurance, I didn't have a retirement account, I had nothing. It never even occurred to me that if the government would just take it from those people over there and give it to me, I mean, that never struck a chord with me. I would have thought that's pathetic, quite frankly. I mean, you really have to get into the mindset that if things are going to change for the better, you're going to be the driver behind it. You're going to make it happen, not somebody else. And that's the mindset that leads to wealth creation. And so I would encourage people, if you want to get rich, start not just dreaming, but making plans, setting goals, and follow through.
Perfect. Well, I know that you have subscribers that pay for your thinking. Is there a place where people can follow you without paying, without subscribing to anything, just see what's...
Yeah, I have a free e-letter that I write. I write 2 columns a week for Liberty Through Wealth. So if you went to libertythroughwealth.com, you could see exactly my thoughts on the economy and the markets and life in general. I write about everything under the sun. And I'll show you exactly how our business model works. We offer a free e-letter, which we obviously lose great gobs of money on, in the hopes that people will subscribe to our investment letter. And then beyond the investment letters, we have short-term trading services, one of which is based solely on insider buying, for instance. But that's how our business model essentially works.
I love it. I love your philosophy and love what you're doing.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Hello again and welcome back. I hope you enjoyed episode 1 of Wealth Breakthroughs. 3 different approaches: entrepreneurship, real estate, and stock market investing. 3 different paths to wealth breakthroughs that could change your life forever. Right now, I'd like to encourage you to share this episode with anyone in your life you think could benefit from seeing it. Look, the need for wealth breakthroughs is all around us. Millions of Americans know they're capable of more, capable of living the life they really want to live. But they're held back, stuck in place by the 9-to-5 grind. Wealth Breakthroughs breaks that old way of thinking forever and puts you on track for a life of true wealth and freedom. Kids, colleagues, neighbors, family, and friends, share this episode with anyone you know searching for their own wealth breakthrough. I'll see you next time for episode 2. Thanks for watching.
When people say money can't buy happiness, like BS. Like, we have access to so much knowledge. I think one of the biggest secrets to wealth and ongoing wealth and sustainable wealth is you must continue to learn. And most people never start their own thing. They get sucked into the mediocrity. They get the mortgage, the car payment, and they got the bills, and they stay in the job.
Right.
And they never reach into themselves and find another level. You know, right now, if you go back and get your master's, on average in America, it's only about a $6,200 a year raise. I know what it's like to be broke and hope for more, have envy that others are getting ahead, feeling like you're being left behind. Even if just one person gets the inspiration to go, or one person gets a tactic that we share, that's enough.
There's such a cloak around Wall Street, the language of Wall Street, the money of Wall Street, the fact that trading desks move so much money around the world in nanoseconds all the time that most of the public has no knowledge of, and most of the public also doesn't even know how it impacts them. But you can, for example, learn about the stock market by buying one share in one thing that you use. So something like that is a particular brand that you actually buy and like and you see in the stores. You may want to just Google some of the information on that and just see if buying one share gets you into the idea of being in the stock market. And that goes up and up.
Now I stick to the most volatile, most liquid stocks. They trade 5, 10, 20, sometimes 50 million shares in a day. There's all these penny stock promoters who absolutely hate me because I teach this stuff openly, right? Before me, no one even really knew that you could short sell penny stocks. Of course you can short sell penny stocks. So it's just about getting good information out there. But more times than not, if you learn the patterns, you can make money. No stock is worth unlimited risk. I'm very happy with 40%. But newbies, they want home runs. But what they don't see is that it's lots of small gains meticulously added up over time and lots of small losses. There's a lot of opportunity with the small market.